I think. Whoops.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of October 15th, 2024. Can we get a, can we establish a quorum, Gail?
Sure. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Ms. Kirkner? Mr. Kane?
Here.
Mr. Huff?
Here.
Mr. Robertson?
Here.
Mr. Swaisen?
Here.
Mr. Lester?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Gordon?
Here.
Secretary Daly?
Here.
Mr. Vice Chair, please let the record reflect that we have 7 members of are present, and we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Item number 4, has everybody had a chance to review the agenda? Today's agenda.
Yes, I have no changes, and if there are no other changes, I would move we approve the agenda as submitted.
Give me a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Item number 5, review and approval of the minutes from the August 7th, 2024 meeting. Everybody get a chance to look at those? Any changes, updates?
I move for approval.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, administrative reports. Daphne.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have just a few things to report to you. The first is just an update on some recommendations that you made to the Board of County Commissioners recently. So last Thursday, on October 10th, the commissioners took action on the development rights and responsibilities agreements. They did vote to enact that. And so that will be effective here very shortly. The other item is that the housing legislation that you all have reviewed and recommended to, the text amendment related to the housing legislation that you forwarded to the commissioners is going to be introduced to them this Thursday, October 17th, and so that will be discussed in the upcoming weeks. I also wanted to, well, there are 2 other things I wanted to do. First, I wanted to introduce 2 new comprehensive planners that we have on staff. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Good morning. We are very excited. We are now fully staffed in the Bureau of Comprehensive Planning, and these are our 2 new planners, Carly Falat and Javier Toro, and I'm just going to ask them to say a couple things about themselves.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Carly Falat. I'm the new planning technician here. I'm very excited to start this new job, this new venture. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Javier Toro. Just joined the team previously from the Department of Citizen Services. It's an honor to be here with you today. I'm definitely looking forward to contributing long-term to the mission that we all have here in Carroll County. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Welcome.
And welcome.
Welcome.
Keep you busy. She'll keep you busy.
Thank you.
You will have lots for them to do. And then the other couple of business items I just wanted to put on your radar screen. We are due to review our procedures and amend them if necessary, and also to elect new officers, I believe. So we'll do that. We'll send those out to you so you have a chance to review them, and then we'll look to take some action on that at one of the upcoming meetings before the end of the year. And along those lines, we had looked at our 2025 meeting dates at our last meeting. If you recall, we shifted the January and July meeting dates from the evening meeting dates from the first Wednesday to the second Wednesday because of the holidays. So you should have gotten a copy of those, and we can either just do a voice approval of those or wait to take care of those when we look at our procedures and the election of officers at the next meeting.
Any thoughts on that? Should we wait until Janice is in attendance for the meeting, since she's the chair? Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that.
All righty. That is it for me.
Okay, thank you. All right, item number 7, concept subdivision plan P220042.
Hold on just a minute, sorry.
Uh-oh.
We do have some BZA cases that Drew is going to update you on.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. 2 BZA cases to update the commission on at this time. Number 1 is case number 6524, which is a request for a conditional use for a 2-family dwelling and variances. This is located at 1242 Washington Road in Westminster, which is more or less right across the street from the Carroll County Career and Technology Center. The requested variances are for the 5 foot on the front yard setback 5 foot on the front yard setback and 10 foot on the rear yard setback. The lot is just over a ½ acre and is located in the county's R10,000 residential zone. The second case is BZA case number 6529, which is a request for a conditional use for a banquet and event facility, and 3 variances to the 200-foot requirement as contained in the code. There may also be a 4th variance for a driveway width requirement of 18-foot width down to 12 foot. The lot is just over 10 acres in size and is located in the county's agricultural zone. Carroll County Planning staff is Carroll County Planning staff requests that the conditional use and variances are consistent with the first variance on Washington Road with the City of Westminster 2009 comprehensive plan, and the second variance with the 2014 Carroll County master plan as amended in 2019. If you have any questions, please let me know, but that is all I have right now.
Okay, thank you. So as a matter of procedure, that's a change to the agenda because the BZA case wasn't listed under administrative reports.
It should have been under other.
Do we need to add that, or?
No, we generally take care of that and any extensions under the administrative reports.
Okay.
So I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, I've seen it both ways where it's listed separately and then it's just talked about under other, so I just wanted to bring that up. Okay, cool.
You didn't have other there.
All right, good.
You might want to do that, but-
All right, item number 7, concept subdivision plan P220042, Harvest Creek, and Kirsten Marple. Batting for Kirsten, looks like David.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, David.
Give me 1 second here. All right, good morning, everyone. David Becraft with the Bureau of Development Review. As relayed, I am standing in for Miss Marple today as she could not be here. So I studied very hard for this project, so I hopefully will be able to answer any questions you may have. So the first one on the docket here is Harvest Creek, file number P-22-0042. This is also known by many as the Zabel property. With me are a few representatives of the project. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Jason Van Kirk, Elm Street Development. We're the developer for the project.
Rick Williams, Development Design Consultants. We're the engineer of record.
Okay. So this project is before you as a concept plan. What is currently being proposed is 137 residential lots. And before I get too deep into the report here, so at the very end, there is a mistype per se. So at the very end of the report, it talks about that this property is within the Freedom Elementary District, and that is incorrect. So this site is actually within the Carrolltown District, Oklahoma Road District, and Liberty High School District. And I'll get into that a little more towards the end here, but I just wanted to make that known that this is not within the Freedom District, it's actually within Oklahoma. So the property itself, the address for it is 7020 Ridge Road down in Marriottsville. And for those that are unsure of where that is on the southeastern corner of the county. So this line down here, the edge of the green, is actually the county line, and Baltimore County line is over in this area here. So the property is highlighted, and you can see Ridge Road here. You see Brangles, 26 is up here, and then 32 is over here. So the property itself is two parcels. So you can see two parcels that are highlighted, and both of those equate, I'll say roughly about 150 acres. And the property is zoned R40,000 with a little corner of it zoned conservation, as you can see here. If you look at the adjoining properties, you can see most of them are zoned residential. So the properties to the east and the north are zoned R40,000. You can see a portion of area over here that's also R40,000. And then this yellow is R20,000. And then on the south side, you can see all the properties in the green that are zoned conservation. So if we move to the next slide, kind of get a zoom in on what's going on here. You can see that there are a lot of open fields where this property was previously farmed. You can also see a lot of streams. So this blue line are streams that are on the property. There are some steep slopes as well throughout the central and southern portions of the property. And there is an existing residential dwelling, which I believe is abandoned, and it has direct access via just a single-use driveway onto Ridge Road. So if we go back a slide here, so the property itself is within the water sewer area. All of that area that's shown within residential, so the R40 and the R20, all has existing water and sewer hookups. This area down in the green is outside of the water and sewer service area. So that will be served by private well and septic. And I'll get into that more as we move through this, but I just wanted to, it's a little easier when you're looking at the whole property like this. Okay, and so just to help orient too as we move through this, because the drawing itself is shifted. So just note, Ridge Road is right here on the north side of the property, and then Forest Hill is down on this area. So if we move to the actual plan, here is Ridge Road right here, and here's Forest Hill right here. So it just rotated a little bit, but just want to help orient everyone. So as mentioned, this development is proposing 137 residential lots, and they'll all be used for single-family dwellings. And you can see most of the lots are within that residential zoning district. Again, kind of clustered towards the north as well as towards the east here. And then there are 4 lots that are within that conservation zoning area. So this line that you see right here, that is the zoning line. So anything on this side is residential, anything on this side is zone conservation. So this development is a cluster residential subdivision. This was actually brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission back in June of last year for authorization to cluster. And we'll get into that a little bit more through the report here, but that authorization was received by the Planning and Zoning Commission. If we look at all the roads that are being proposed, so as mentioned, here's Ridge Road here. There is a full movement access that's proposed to connect onto Ridge Road. And then you can see a connection to Prothero Road, which is here. So they are looking to extend Prothero Road, kind of meander throughout the site and then terminate at the edge of the property. There is an extension of Lazy Morning Way down here, which will lead into a shared driveway for these 4 lots. And then there is a connection right now known as Road E onto Forest Hill Road. There are 2 future connections that are shown but are not going to be constructed with this development. One of those is this here onto the neighboring property. So this land will be conveyed to the county, but no roads will be constructed for that. And then another future road is the realignment of Ridge Road and Marriott Road 2, which again we'll talk about later into the report here. So as mentioned, the property itself has a lot of streams, has a lot of steep slopes, and so the lots kind of work with that to not have too many of those lots impeded by those features. So as mentioned, you can see the majority of the lots hug the property lines with a little bit in the central region. All of this area here that you see as well, open space is exactly that. That's going to be the required open space from the cluster subdivision. And those are going to house the streams and wetlands and steep slopes as well. So that is a perfect segue. So as everyone is aware, with the cluster subdivision, you are able to essentially shrink the lot sizes. You're not getting any more lots, but you're able to shrink those lot sizes to those minimum size requirements. And that difference between the required lot size and the lot size you're proposing has to be set aside as open space, which is to be used by the community members. And so the open space, as mentioned, currently it buffers most of those environmental features. The plan shows a total of 61 acres of open space that's allocated throughout the development, and the minimum requirement for this is 59.3. So very close, but they are exceeding that minimum requirement. And so to give a little history of the trajectory of this process, so the project was brought before the Technical Review Committee. It was subject to citizen involvement at that time, back in July of 2022. There were 6 citizens in attendance at that meeting, and they relayed comments and concerns regarding the landscape buffers to the existing residential neighborhoods surrounding the property. There were also concerns of stormwater runoff and soil erosion on the property, and with school capacity as well. The project was further subject to citizen involvement at the Planning and Zoning Commission, where they were before you as a special report. The report's purpose was to seek authorization to cluster, which they did receive, and that was June of 2023. So essentially a year after that Technical Review Committee. And then at that meeting and after that meeting, there were various phone calls and emails received by the department. And a lot of those relate to the traffic that this property will develop with the addition of 137 lots. There was some conversation as relates to this alignment here. Again, this is not part of this development, but it is a planned major street. So this alignment is something that is within the Carroll County Master Plan. And it's something that the county is looking to do and still striving to do as they work towards, working with the landowners in that area, but also with funds as well. It's always funds. And so we did hear people that were for that alignment. We also heard from people that were against that alignment. So that was a lot of what was discussed after that last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Again, another item that came up was the school capacity issues down in the Freedom area. A lot of the schools are getting to and approaching inadequate. There were some concerns brought up about the potential of grave sites that may be on the property. Someone had relayed that they would like to see larger houses on the development with larger lots versus what's currently being proposed. They also requested to reduce the number of lots on Lazy Morning Way. And so as part of those comments and concerns that were received, the development team that's behind this, they actually made some changes in reference to some of those concerns heard. So some of those changes that they made were to reduce the number of lots that would be accessed on Lazy Morning Way. So previously there was 10 lots that was accessed from here, and now it is 4 lots. They also made some changes to the lot sizes in this area, so they've enlarged these lots within the Conservation Zoning District. And there's also a reconfiguration of some open space parcels to create a little bit more buffer between the new and existing subdivisions that are in the area. So with any cluster subdivision, especially one that's within the residential zoning district, there are many requirements that you have to have for your open space. And so just looking at the code here, some of the requirements are you can only have a maximum of 50% of the required open space on steep slopes, streams, ponds, watercourses, and floodplains. And then you have to have a minimum of 10% of the required open space, or 1/2 acres, whichever is greater, suitable for active recreational use. And essentially that means you can't have the grade exceed 3%. So what they're currently showing, as mentioned, is there's a lot of open space shown throughout the property, but as it relates to the required active open space, that is shown more on the, I guess it'd be the eastern side, because we're reoriented here. So this area down here is going to be the active open space, as well as this area here, this parcel here, and then in this area here. So the numbers as it relates to the amount of open space provided, the amount that's shown within those environmental features, and the amount that's provided that is active open space, all the numbers align with what's allowed within our code. So no problems there. There was a traffic impact study that was done for this development. So originally, when the development came through, they were proposing 143 residential lots. And so a traffic impact study was done at that time for 143 residences. Since then, there have been changes to where it is 137 lots now. Back when it was 143, there were no issues as it relates to the level of service in this area on the roads. So no improvements were required when it was 143 lots. And so thus, with the reduction of lots, there's still no improvements that are required per the traffic impact study. Engineering review, as well as State Highway Administration, both looked at the traffic impact study. They had no comments. They actually concur with what was provided. And as we move through the review process, there's going to be additional details provided to both of those agencies as it relates to traffic, as well as other road improvements that may happen within the development, as well as the connections onto existing roadways. Emergency Services has approved the plan, having made note of the extension of Prothero. Again, the extension here and then meandering through the site. The Health Department has looked at the well and septic of these 4 proposed lots and actually had no issues. They granted concept approval, and they'll be included in added review as we move through the subdivision process. Stormwater Management has granted concept approval. Stormwater management will be addressed via dry wells on each individual lot. as well as microbiome retention facilities and submerged gravel wetlands within separate parcels throughout the development. So a lot of these other parcels that house these stormwater management facilities are going to be granted to the county to maintain and ensure stormwater management is clear for all of the proposed lots. Floodplain and water resources have both approved the plan. Both are going to require easements, again, along those water courses and streams that run through the property. A floodplain study is also going to be required as we move through this review process. Grading and soil conservation have reviewed and approved the plan. Forest conservation and landscaping requirements will be detailed further as we move through the preliminary plan. And finally, with this being a major subdivision, the project is subject to concurrency management, Chapter 156. As mentioned, it's not required at this point. We're not looking for any approvals at this point, but we do like to give an idea as to how those current facilities stand. And so I did look at the numbers for those 3 schools previously mentioned, so Carrolltown, Oklahoma Road, and Liberty. So everything's adequate as of now, but within the 6-year CIP, which is how far we look, Carrolltown will be approaching inadequate at that time. So right around 2029 is when it breaches past that adequate and goes into approaching inadequate. And then Oklahoma Road is on the cusp of approaching inadequate at that time. And then Liberty is adequate. So that's the end of my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and as well as the representatives here. And just to give an idea before we move on to further discussion, just to kind of show. So this is on Ridge Road, I believe, looking into the site. So this is where one of the proposed access points is going to be. And then these are terminus points on existing roadways, again, where you're looking into the site, where road is either going to be extended or is going to be connected to. So I'm going to go back to the plan itself, and I'm happy to answer any questions or comments the commission may have.
I have a question about the open space.
Yes.
Could the one house that's next to the,
This one?
could that house be moved over across to, just across the road? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that you just have one larger open space.
Certainly an option that we can look at.
I say, and I have some zoom ins of the plan here just to make it a little easier to see. So you're asking that this house, this lot, be relocated so that way instead of having a small open space and a small open space, it's just one larger open space parcel.
Right.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about the interior lots. Are they flag lots, or is that a roadway that goes up and is shared, or a cul-de-sac that's shared with the 6 homes,
The
proposed
middle
6
lower
homes?
quadrant, right there.
Yeah, right in the middle, right in the center.
Okay, let me find it here. Give me a second.
There we go.
Okay, it
There
looks
you
like
go.
this is it here.
Yeah.
So I believe that there is going to be a county-maintained road that's being built here, and then there's going to be shared driveways that are coming back on that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So those shared driveways will not be county maintained?
No.
That's correct. Yeah, so those shared driveways, we do require a DMO, a declaration of maintenance obligations, be recorded for those lots, so that way everybody's putting in their fair share. But at that point, there's no additional input from the county as it relates to that.
And are they tested for emergency services, response, equipment, size, width? of the street, blah, blah, blah.
So I'm not sure if they're tested per se. I do know emergency services, they are included on the review of this plan, and they didn't seem to have any issues with what's proposed.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay on that, David. I mean, Michael, you're homing in on something that, you know, just from a congestion, you know, we can imagine, you know, an afternoon traffic pattern where there's school buses, UPS, you know, Amazon, parents rushing home to meet the bus. And it would make sense to me that we eliminate, if you could, you eliminate that middle drive so that there's kind of a horseshoe of that shared drive, so that at least there's some sort of circulation back in there. And you know, forget the traffic congestion, just from an emergency vehicle access standpoint. You would hate for them to pull in and then have to back down to get to the right house. So if you created a kind of a horseshoe to where you could circulate back in there amongst those 10 homes that are flag lots, I would think that would be ideal. But again, you know, David, Jason, we're telling you how to do this. I would just be concerned from an emergency access standpoint and from a circulation standpoint, you know, traffic, trash pickup, all those things.
That's certainly something that we can we can look at. What I will say on these common drives, when we feel that there might be issues with conflict, we can provide pass-through areas, wider areas of paving, turnaround areas, you know, different things like that help to alleviate some of those concerns. But certainly open to kind of looking at the loop idea that you have as well.
And one thing I'll mention too, so one of the limiting factors for that within a shared driveway situation are the number of users. So within county code, it says that within this zoning district, you can have a maximum of 5 users per shared driveway. That's not to say that we haven't seen modifications to that come before the Planning and Zoning Commission, but that is something to keep in mind.
So these drawings, they look like they're showing 6.
There's 4, and then 2 is because they're off the cul-de-sac is a use in common to those 2, number 27 and I think that might be, or 127 and 128. And then the others each have 4. The lots that are fronting Road D are exactly that. They are fronting Road D, and they driveway directly out onto Road D.
That makes sense. That's the difference. Okay.
So I would say if you did a looped road, you'd still have the same county standards if you made that a circle instead of getting rid of the cul-de-sac. You'd still have the same standards for curbs and the whole 9 yards. So it's
yeah, and David made a good point there, because that then would be more than 5,
Yep.
and which is not exactly to the code as it stands today.
Okay.
How many stormwater ponds are on this property?
I can't say that I've counted them. To be exact, I would guess that we're in the 10 range.
I think we might have, I think we might be 10 to 20.
10 to 20.
That doesn't include the dry wells.
I mean, some of them are like as you look at this, you see a very large submerged gravel wetland there that is green on to the top, but then as you kind of come across the stream, you see 2 very small microbial retention areas. So that those are 3, but 3 of very different sizes. And then you see a submerged gravel wetland. The submerged gravel wetlands are larger in size. That's how the state and the county's stormwater management regulations work. And then the microbial practices end up smaller, harder to see because they are much smaller footprints. I almost think of them as, you know, they're an area, stormwater management area where you might have several small microbiomes, but it's really treating the area around it.
There's 5 on this sheet alone.
And yeah, you're looking at 5 on this sheet.
And who maintains them?
So,
County.
if I may, I'm looking at my beautiful color-coordinated drawing here, and on this, it shows 10 parcels coming to the county. Each one of those parcels having some type of stormwater management feature on it. And those will be owned and maintained by the county. And I believe that's for a subdivision of this where these features are serving more than one lot. That's something that is pretty standard and I believe written in our code, if I'm not mistaken.
I know this is a far reach, but has there ever been a cost analysis on how much it would cost to maintain those ponds over the years to the county? Does it?
Maybe. Not that I'm aware of, but that's out of my world. That's more in the Bureau of Resource Management.
I mean, I'm just thinking, you know, how many of those taxes on those houses, how many of them are taxed enough to pay for the maintenance of the stormwater ponds? Sometimes it can be pretty costly. That's why I was wondering about it. I hate to keep adding cost to county. And it seems like I counted up a good many too, and I couldn't see them all. That's why I was asking about it.
So I don't have a good answer for that question.
I don't think
Nobody
anybody does.
has
I
done
didn't-
that.
It's a hypothetical.
Correct.
It's a valid hypothetical question.
I think what I wanted to point out on this in terms of the cost sharing that is occurring on the plan is that, you know, in around the houses, you'll see smaller squares. You'll see 4 of them basically in most of those yards. And those are the dry wells that are doing a lot of the stormwater management from a quality standpoint. And those are homeowner maintained. And so there's a fair amount of that stormwater quality management amount is paid for by the homeowners.
David, just walk us through how this plan gets approved.
Okay, well.
Walk us through from a CIP standpoint, what happens from a school. Walk us through what happens with the schools.
Sure. So following this meeting, because there's no action required, it'll just keep moving through the process.
Right.
It will transition into the quote-unquote preliminary stage in which a resubmittal will be provided to all agencies except any that gave final approval or gave an exemption, which I don't believe there's many for this one, if any, for this project. They will work to obtain approvals from every one of those agencies. I say approval, I mean a preliminary approval. At that point, it will be tested for adequacy of public facilities. That includes schools, that includes fire, EMS, police, water, sewer. And roads. Thank you. I knew there was one more. And roads. And then that information will be collected and will be presented to you with the preliminary plan for approval. And again, assuming these numbers on the school either stay the same or improve, we would have, our code would allow for a conditional approval of that, with it to be retested again at the final plan stage. So assuming that's the route that the Planning and Zoning Commission goes in, you say, okay, we grant this conditional approval, let's see what the numbers look like at the final stage. It will then transition again into the final plan stage, in which it'll get, again, resubmitted to every agency, address all those comments at a final level. So any comment that anyone has would have to be addressed. And final approval would have to be granted by every one of those agencies before being brought back, again, as a final plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Any of those facilities, including schools, would get retested if they were approaching inadequate or inadequate, and that'll be presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission for your consideration and approval at that time. And depending what those numbers show, the code will outline what is possible to be done by the Planning and Zoning Commission. If it's adequate or approaching inadequate, the Planning and Zoning Commission will have the option to approve or conditionally approve. If any of those are inadequate, then the Planning and Zoning Commission is forced to deny it. There is no option to approve it at that point. So depending on what the numbers show, that will really outline the options that the Planning Commission have.
Even in a project this size, does the concurrency management cover water and sewer?
Yes. So with this being hooked up, I believe 137 lots, 4 of those on well and septic. That leaves 133 lots on water and sewer, water and sewer. So those will be looked at for, the water and sewer service area.
So when that concurrency 156 is tested, is that tested as if the project was completed? All 137 homes were in?
Yes.
So, but 137 homes can't be built at once. I think, was it capped at 25 a year?
Our current code has limits on the number of permits that can be pulled per year.
So this project, say it's 20, I think it's 25. That makes a 6-year project. Nowhere during that project is 156 retested for schools or anything else, given other things that are going on in the county down there.
That is with the current code. Assuming nothing changes, I believe there's conversations with the Board of County Commissioners in regards to that section of code.
And I'll just make a quick comment. He is correct. There are ongoing conversations on that section of the code at this moment.
And that's something we probably need to think about in the master plan, I guess, as we're going through this process of redesigning all that and rethinking through some of that.
It's certainly something you can
We could
choose to address.
chime in
yeah.
on. Okay. All right. Any other members?
I just had one quick question, and it's not completely germane to this project, but was just curious. So there's 137 houses we're looking at. What was the lot sizes for the homes again?
So
go ahead.
The lots are clustered in the R40,000 section of the property down to a 20,000 square foot minimum. And so some of those are really close to 20. Some of them are a little bit above 20.
Okay.
Then the 4 lots that are in the conservation zone, they get clustered down to a minimum of 1 acre. And so that's their size.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So it was 150 acres originally. Take 60 out for the open space, leaves 90 divided by 100 and, well, I guess you could probably take out the other 4, which are larger, and then divide that by 133 into whatever that 80 turns, approximately 80 turns.
Right, and then you have to, so you also have to remove, the area for the roads, stormwater management parcels and stuff like that. But that's correct. So once you remove all that, everything left is just what's used for the residential lots.
Is any of that space, I've seen some of the public comment about Shailen Drive, am I pronouncing that correctly? Shailen. The landscaping between, the buffer between those existing homes and the new development. Is that just open space, or is there currently trees in that space that could be left alone, for lack of a better term, to help shield?
So if we go back here, you can see this is that drive you're talking about.
Yes.
I also do not know how to pronounce it.
So it's just a field.
And you can see it looks to be pretty open. Now, as far as if any landscaping is to be planted there, if it's required to be planted there, I know it's mentioned that our landscape specialist is going to have further review of this in the preliminary plan stages. I'm not 100% sure what that equates to. But maybe Jason or Rich will be able to provide some insight.
I certainly would add to this discussion point that the concept plan doesn't have a landscape plan in it. That's what we'll be putting together when we do the preliminary plan. There is a perimeter landscaping requirement in Carroll County, which we will certainly meet. Along this edge, however, I've in my discussions with the homeowners along that edge, I've told them that I would beef up the county perimeter buffer above the county requirement. So, how exactly that happens in terms of getting it on a plan without having to bond it, if that's possible, or how that works. We've certainly said that to them, and I like planting trees and creating good buffers for neighbors and that sort of thing. So that's very much something that we're looking to do at the next plan stages.
Thank you. Yeah.
I probably ask this question on every project, but I've got to ask it again. And that's a traffic study. The traffic study is pertaining only to Ridge Road or other feeder roads? How's this determined? Seems like we get down to the a lot of times the traffic problems, and I just would like to understand how these traffic studies are done. Is it based on the progression of the project? Is it based on the final outcome 6 years down the road? Or give me just an overview quickly, if you don't mind.
Sure. It is including the full development of the project, so that you're including all the impacts of the completed project. The scope of that is determined by your planning department. In the engineering group does tell us what intersections that they want analyzed. And it is much more than just Ridge Road. You go into a kind of a regional circle around the property and a lot of the major intersections that occur. It's a fairly thick report that's put together and has been approved by your department, both in scope as well as the analysis that was performed by our third-party consultant and submitted for review.
Okay, thank you.
Staying on that vein, the leg of the road coming out of the subdivision onto an existing road down there at the bottom.
Yes.
What is the width, that road that we're connecting to that comes out on Marriottsville Road? What's the width of that road? I'm just curious. Is that we're going to be putting additional traffic on that neighborhood road that heretofore has not enjoyed that traffic, if you can say it in such a way. Is that what's going on along that road there? Is there a sidewalk along that existing road?
There's no sidewalk along the Forest Hill Road. I think you're referring to Forest Hill.
That's Forest Hill.
Yeah. There's no sidewalk there. It wasn't in a zone that required that at the time of its development. It very similarly to how we're leaving what I call a paper street on the north side of our property. Forest Hill did the same thing at this location. There's been a case about that with regard to one neighbor adversely possessed it during COVID, but didn't notify the county. We've unwound that through the court system and are still kind of resolving that case to make that connection. It's a desire of the county to make that connection, and we've as the developer have push that case for the purpose that the county does want us to make that connection, and we'll certainly make it if we can get to the point of the commissioners of Carroll County owning that roadway in order to be able to do so. It's not our intent, though, to make that an entrance to the community, so to speak. We will be doing a monumented kind of grander entrance along Ridge Road, with the intent to be driving our traffic to that intersection, and then certainly Prothero, while it's not connected on this east side, but will be certainly in the future with a capital project on the west side. The connection to existing Prothero would be I think a frequently used entrance here as well if you're heading in the western direction. But again, from our standpoint of our driving traffic to the site and from a sales purpose, trying to get people to come in Ridge Road in the monumental entrance is our intent. And then, the Forest Hill is really to adhere to the desires of the Public Works Department to make that connection to Forest Hill, which you see going on and to the north side of us providing that connection point as well.
So I'll add on to that too. So I was looking for that scoping letter, and I don't see it in our file, but that is certainly something that we can have when this comes back as a preliminary plan, just so that there is an open dialogue as it relates to that. And then obviously the traffic impact study will have been reviewed additionally within that preliminary stage as well. But as it relates to a lot of these road connections, so as Mr. Van Kirk had relayed, although there is a minor issue that's been brought up, I call it minor, I'll just call it an issue, with the land here and this connection here, with this development, that roadway area was always intended to have a connection to this development, and it's shown on the record plat within your guys' packets. Same with Prothero Road. This is, I believe, a planned major street, so it was always intended to be extended and have additional traffic led onto it. And so there's certainly a desire to have that interconnectivity. In case there is an issue, say, with this main access point on Ridge Road, at least the residents have alternate routes, or as it relates to fire and EMS, they may have a quicker route to get there from their current location versus having to go all the way around and into that main entrance. So the county always does strive to have that interconnectivity between neighborhoods, both existing and proposed. And another thing that I should have mentioned previously, so as it relates to the water and sewer for all of these lots within the residential zoning district, there are existing water and sewer lines within Prothero, and those will be extended and essentially branch out from Prothero to each of those individual houses through those proposed roadways. So just something else to mention.
As part of that sewer infrastructure, we will be constructing a pump station at the low point in our site that will lift the effluent up to the gravity sewer that is in Prothero.
Good. Public comment. It looks like we have some public comment. So here's the procedures or the rules for public comment. Speakers must sign in to make public comment. Speakers step up to the microphone, state your name, address, and talk right into the microphone since we are being recorded. Comments will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Citizens' testimony is not a Q&A. Questions may be directed to staff after the meeting. If an individual fails to comply with the rules, the Planning and Zoning Commission chair may call the person out of order and may require him or her to leave the meeting. So, public comment, microphone's there. Step right up. The microphone back in the middle, sir.
Sorry. Good morning, William Warner. I live on Forest Hill Road. I've been up there since the 70s, seen a lot of things go on. 3 minutes would not begin to cover the concerns of the neighbors and the surrounding people of this project. The first thing that I think it's David brought up, the abandoned house is the Zabel property. Mr. and Mrs. Zabel lived there. I think it's a stone building. I was in it once many years ago. It goes back to the 1700s, and I'm glad to hear that's in conservation. But the main concerns of myself and all the neighbors is the roads. I know they've claimed they've done an extensive road analysis, but in the general consensus is there's no way Marriottsville Road number 2 can handle additional traffic. You figure with the housing that's proposed to be built, each house will have 2 cars. That's going to make it even worse. Rush hour and on that road is a nightmare. I see no way it can handle it. Of course, we have concerns about the schools And I think originally, I don't know if Kristen's here or not from the Freedom. Oh, hi. I think originally we were told that these access roads were not going to come into existing neighborhoods. That seems that's not the case. I know Forest Hill is a small road with a lot of dog walkers and runners, no sidewalks. I see no way that the traffic from a new development is going to be allowed to come into that neighborhood. It's just not feasible. The traffic is the main concern. I can't see it.
Okay.
But also the landscaping, I think we touched on that briefly. Hopefully, if this goes through, there's going to be some good landscaping done to sort of shield the existing neighbors from the proposed roads that they want to cut through, particularly if this Prothero Road comes through the Zabel Field, which is right directly in back of Forest Hill. The landscaping would certainly be something that would be needed. And that's about all I've got right now.
Okay.
Can't wait to hear Kristen speak.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good morning. My name is Nate Krachunas. I live on Shailen Drive at 7124. I've been involved in this process for the last 3 years, and me and my neighbors have been very vocal, and we were involved in, I think, influencing the rezoning from, this property was supposed to be rezoned to R20,000. Through the outcry of the community, the commissioners decided to keep it R40,000. It's on the books at R40. It was scheduled to be changed to R20,000, which could have had all sorts of other clustering happening here. But my fundamental problem with all of this is a concept of like for like. We have one acre homes, a beautiful community on Shailen Drive. The current plan has 5 half-acre homes all clustered right behind my house. They said they've made changes from lazy morning from 10 to 4. Well, 2 of those homes landed right behind my home on the new plan. So when I've reached out to Jason and the folks from the development company, they're saying, well, you know, they're going to keep their R40,000 lots together with other R40,000 lots. Why are they doing that? Because nobody wants to buy a brand new 1 acre home clustered with 5 homes right behind it. But yet they're doing that to our community. So I asked the commission here to have some reasonableness check on what's going on behind the existing communities. The way things are clustered, you know, when the commissioners voted to keep it R40,000, I was like, well, what a great win for us. I thought I was going to have 1 acre homes behind my existing 1 acre home. But what I have are 5 half-acre homes directly behind my house. In the previous iteration of the plan, there was actually some open space behind my home. And I guess because other people were vocal on lazy morning, now those homes are behind my home, which is unfortunate. But that's why I'm here this morning, to ask for, look at the perimeter. There needs to be reasonableness with the size of the lots that are already I've been living there for nearly 15 years. I hate to say it this way, but we were there first. So to have these R40,000 homes in other areas of the neighborhood while clustering smaller homes right behind us, I made a comment to my neighbor that these 5 homes behind my home is probably going to cost me $100,000 in property value. So I would just ask the folks in this room to take a look at what's happening around the perimeter. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, good morning. My name is Michael McGarity. I live at 7113 Shailen Drive. My wife and I have been there for 19 years. We're small business owners in Carroll County. I'd like to echo the sentiments of my neighbor Nate. I don't have a lot to add to that. I think he said it very well. Our community is very upset with the way this plan is laid out. We ask that changes be made so that the lots behind our community are consistent with the same lot size that we have. The rework that was done on the lots around Lazy Morning is what we would like to see along the backside of our development on Shailen Drive. You know, a small landscape buffer of trees is great, but that's not what we requested. Back when we saw the original plan from February, we requested that the developer add some open space, and if not open space, then at least have lots that are the same size as our lots on Shailen Drive. Not only did they not take that into consideration or make any attempt to show, to make revisions to that layout, but they've added additional 3 lots. Originally there was 13 half-acre lots with flag lots behind my neighbor Nate's house. They've now added 3 additional lots closer to the Ridge Road side on the north side of our development, making it now 16 half-acre lots that abut right up against our neighborhood. You know, we feel that that's just not harmonious to the way our subdivision is laid out, and we'd like to see the Planning Commission ask for revisions to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Amelia Crouch. I live at 2170 Morningwood Drive. I walk Forest Hill every day. Every day, everyone needs to get their 10,000 steps in, and I walk from the back of the property all the way to Marriottsville 2 every single day, and oftentimes I have either a dog and 2 kids in tow. The road right now, as it stands, is not safe. You know, it's safe for me to walk on in the middle of the day, but there's a lot of curves to Forest Hill, a lot of blind curves. So my concern is about Road E. If you give people the option coming from the other side of the Brangles and the Prothrow, if you give them 2 options, one to come out through Road E, through Forest Hill to Marriottsville 2, that gets them closer to 70, versus coming out through the main entrance of Ridge Road, they're gonna choose the path, the 3 minutes quicker route, the closer it gets them to going down Marriottsville Road to get to Marriottsville, get to 70. You're gonna, you know, the developer said, well, we want to make sure they're coming out through the main entrance. It's not gonna happen. We know it's not gonna happen. They're going to plug it into Waze, and Waze is gonna send them through Road E, through Forest Hill, through that horrible intersection of Marriottsville and Forest Hill. It's just not right. And what I'm hearing here is between the developer and the county, the developer has told us that they're okay not doing it. It's coming from the county to connect this new property into ours. And nobody has quite told me why. I know they want to have everyone connected, but why do we need to connect these 2 roads together to increase the traffic, to make our road that is not built for high traffic with no sidewalks? It's a skinny street. People park on the sides of the road. The safety of us on Forest Hill is gone if you could connect that road. So I want the county to rethink what is the intent and what are we trying to solve with having this tiny connector road coming through our neighborhood. And because if you give them the options, people are gonna come through our neighborhood and not out the main entrance. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kristen Morinelli. I live in the Forest Hills neighborhood. I wanted to touch on what Emmy had said as well. I agree. It may not be the intention that this Road E is going to be another permanent or constant entry point for the neighborhood, but I agree with everything she said. The people from Prothrow are constantly going to be using it as a cut through because it's going to save time. You're going to avoid school buses on Ridge or something like that. It's not a safe intersection. I asked for a traffic accident report in 2021, so I don't have more recent figures than that. But between 2019 and 2021, which I want to remind you, people weren't traveling as much because a lot of people were still home. There were 15 accidents on Marriottsville 2 right around the neighborhood entrance between Arrington Road and Ridge Road. There were 15 accidents, and the only intersection between those two roads is the Forest Hill intersection. Personally, I was in the car with my husband and my 2 children. We saw a motorcycle try to pull into our neighborhood and get hit by a car, and the motorcyclist flew through the air. We had an incident a few years ago where one neighbor was coming in on his bicycle and he was hit by another neighbor and he was in the ICU for 3 weeks. This is not a safe intersection for the 48, I believe, houses that live in Forest Hill to be accessing Marysville too. Please don't add 137 from the new development plus however many homes are in Prothero accessing this intersection. I know a traffic study was done, and I'm sorry, I've been involved with this since 2019, but I don't have all my information here. But my question was, who did the traffic study? Was it an independent company? Was Road E being considered at the time this traffic study was done? Because until very recently, we were unaware that Road E was planned as an access point. I'm sorry. And we're hearing that Road E was always intended and that the county desires it. Who other than the county and a standard regulation is requiring this? I mean, it could have been on the plans for 40 years, but if it doesn't make sense now, why do it? We have to look at the data in front of us and see if this should be done. I just want to mention school impact quickly because I have a daughter at Oklahoma Road Middle School. A lot of parents are complaining about the capacity of the school this year compared to last year. Last year we had 758 students, which was 95% capacity. This year, the projected enrollment, I'm not sure what it actually is, but it was 822, which is an increase of 64 students, which bumped it to 103%. Parents are already seeing the discrepancies between this year and last year between students not having enough seats on the bus. Some students were sitting on the aisles of the bus, and the classrooms being overcrowded.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. David, I'm sorry.
So one thing I'll mention that was relayed is, so what was told to me is that that is correct, that this Road E connection was not included in the traffic impact study. However, in looking at the numbers, the level of service for the impacted roadways for that, it was relayed that although it wasn't included in the traffic impact study, the level of service for those roadways that would be affected by that connection there'd be no way for this development to reduce that enough to be a failing level. So although it was not included in the traffic impact study, based on what was looked at on the numbers and the level of service existing for that roadways, that it would not have any inverse effect on the traffic impact study.
I think hearing public comment about that, though, from several folks, we should go back to the traffic impact study, and I hear what you're saying. It's probably not going to make a difference, but get the official word from the traffic impact study folks. And they're independent of the county, correct? So I think that might, help lessen some concern. I'm also, and I know this is a time for us to give recommendations, thoughts, considerations and stuff. Hearing a lot about sidewalks. So I'm hoping you guys are taking that into your putting those in your notes too about, all about the safety of the neighborhoods. And with that many homes, children, little kids on bikes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, sidewalk sounds like a really good idea.
So 2 things, if I may. First, that's correct. So the county is not the one actually doing the traffic impact study. We're reviewing the numbers, making sure that everything is as it should be, and that we'll make comments, make recommendations, change this, change that, and kind of work with their consultant, whoever that may be.
And I say these, we're not a commission hammer, got to do this, This is about balance. It's about balance with the developer, with the existing community, the schools, the fire, all those levels that come into consideration. So, I just, like I said, I hope everybody's taking good notes and putting those into their plans, because this is just the first step, and we'll see this several more times before us in the future.
And the second thing I wanted to mention is I believe all of the proposed roadways will have sidewalk on them. I believe the only exception to that will be this Road E, because as relayed, Forest Hill Road, there are no sidewalks, and so it would just be a sidewalk to nowhere, essentially. So, but all these other roadway connections, I believe, are going to be constructed with sidewalks.
That's correct.
That is correct.
Okay. All right.
Well, 2 or 3 thoughts before we move on. Daphne, for a couple of years, I've been suggesting that when we do traffic studies for the Freedom District as a whole, that the county include Marysville Road 2. And there are basically 3 exits for 30,000 people in the Freedom District to take to go east to Baltimore and south to Columbia, DC, you know, the BWI Business District, wherever they're headed. Those 3 are 32, Marysville Road 2, which is, you know, it's not designed, it's a beautiful drive. I used to drive it every single day. And then 26, and we never include that intersection at Marysville and 70. We never include the traffic coming into the Freedom District through that route, and it's a tremendous oversight that we as a county are making. The second one is and this is just a food for thought, you know, to encourage the county to redesign the connection from Prothrow and the redesign to Marysville Road 2 that we're contemplating. You know, I don't know what can be done to encourage that capital project forward at the same time this development goes in, but that would, I think, alleviate a lot of the concerns about E. And maybe one of the things we could do is say, look, you know, E is going to be built, but there's going to be a barrier up until the county does what it's supposed to do to redesign Marysville Road 2 and make that S-turn that's so dangerous a little more, it's still not a great road, just doing that. And the last thing is, and Mary Lane is going to, you know, laugh at me for doing this. We heard from a couple of citizens. I understand clustering, and I'm going to beat it one more time because it's in my DNA. As citizens, we have a certain expectation, and when you think something, hey, it's not going to be R20, it's going to be R40, and then all of a sudden when we allow clustering, R40 is not R40, it's something else because we allow the clustering. And so the expectation of the citizens, we've heard it here today, by allowing clustering, and it's in the code, so you guys, you know, run with it, do with it what you can. I'll say it again, we've created that nebulous ability where R40 does not mean R40. It really doesn't. It means R40, but if you cluster, it's really R20 in disguise. So I'm just, you know how frustrated I am with it, and y'all are tired of hearing it. I'm tired of saying it. But again, we hear it today from the citizens. There's a certain, I'm going to use the word certain twice in the sentence. The citizens have a certain expectation, and the regulations in our code should create certainty, not uncertainty. And I think by allowing that in the code, we do our citizens a disservice, particularly in these high growth areas. And thank you for listening for, I don't know how many times I've said it, but all right, I'm done, thanks.
It's been a few, Peter.
Thank you.
Yes, one more? Sure.
I wasn't intending to speak to this property because I don't live anywhere near this property. My name's Kim Hartman. I live on 711 Redwood Drive in Westminster. I'm here to comment otherwise. But when I listen to these 2 gentlemen talk about wanting to protect the clusters, they've lived in their property for almost 20 years, and to keep what you said consistent, they'd like the lots behind them to be consistent with their lots. I hope that this commission takes that to heart. I feel for them because I have a situation where we've been in our house for over 20 years, and I now have a septic sand wall mounds behind our house. It's not consistent with anything in our development or the developments around us, and it's very disappointing, and I'm not going to take any more of your time, but I hope you continue to follow the plans. And if you hear anything about a septic mound system right behind you, keep your eye on it and make your voice known to the commission before it happens. That's all the time I'm going to take at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, well, thank you, everyone. We will look forward to seeing you guys at the next level of planning here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
He's approaching the bench.
Sorry, guys.
I was going to join in. Yeah. You know what, Peter?
Just trying to figure out why Redwood Drive is here. Down from Redwood Drive. He's near Redwood Drive. I'm friends who live on Redwood Drive. That's why I'm trying to figure it out.
Okay, moving on. Next on the agenda, concept site plan S230028 Primrose School Child Care Facility. David, still have a voice?
I do. And we are still in the morning, so good morning again.
All right.
David B. Craft, Bureau of Development Review. As you mentioned, the next one on the docket here is Primrose School Child Care Facility, file number S230028. This is before the Planning and Zoning Commission as a concept plan, and we do have a couple representatives of the development team here. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Pete Podolak. I am the site engineer. My registration number is 19561, and I represent ADA Architects and Primrose Schools as well. And I am joined by Melissa Statler, who's with ADA Architects, and she can answer any questions regarding the building and building construction. And I also have Mark Keeley here, and he is the traffic engineer. And so he can answer any questions regarding the traffic studies that were done for this project.
Thank you. Welcome.
So as mentioned, this is a concept plan before the Planning and Zoning Commission. As with any concept site development plans before the commission, you do hold the power to delegate final approval to the chair. So the property itself, for those who may be unfamiliar, it is down in the Eldersburg area, and it is north of Dickinson Road. So here's Dickinson here, here's Hemlock, here's 26, and then here's Oklahoma Road. And so the property is mostly forested, it is undeveloped, and you can see it's kind of bordered by residential zone property. So the property to the east here, that is Oklahoma Road Middle School. The property to the north and the west, this is a subdivision called the Hemlocks. And then properties to the south you can see are also zoned commercial. The property is within the water and sewer service area, so it will be serviced by public water and sewer. And if we move on to the next slide here, so we zoom in on the property, and you can see that it is completely undeveloped. This, although the aerial I think is from last year, it's still an accurate representation of what the property looks like. And you'll also note that there are existing sidewalks along Dickinson Road here, along the full frontage of the property.
David, I'm sorry, what's the acreage of the site?
The property is about 2.2 acres.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I'll move back here just to give a little bit of insight. So Dickinson Road, it wasn't always connected through to Hemlock and to Oklahoma. So in 2000, Dickinson Road was extended, and then and 2008, it was further extended to make this connection here. Sometime in between, so in 2003, the subject property was platted, and with that platting, there was a note added to the plan that no building permits shall be issued unless the site development plan went through the process and was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. However, in 2009, an amended plat was processed in which it was deemed non-buildable. So they still had that note on there, but a non-buildable annotation was added to the property. There is an amended plat that's being processed to remove that non-buildable annotation. I believe that was put on there in accident per that previous note. I guess someone had concluded that it was non-buildable, which that's not the fact. It's definitely buildable. So there is an amended plat that's being processed to remove that non-buildable annotation, but keep the previous one, in which stated that it has to go through the site development process before any type of building permits can be issued. So just something to note. So as we move on to what's currently being proposed, it is we'll call it a 13,000, give or take, square foot building, and it's going to be used for a childcare facility. And since we have architects here, if you look at the current building proposal, the elevations that are on the screen are also within the plan set, and the height of the building. So at the cupola, I believe is a proper way to say it. It is 35 feet, so from ground level, 35 feet. But to the flat roof, which you see is the majority of the building, is 18 feet. So well within the zoning requirements within this zoning district. The exterior design is going to be board and batten, as well as a stone veneer, and it will have a metal roof. So moving on again, looking at the site, you can see that the building is kind of central to the current lot. Parking is shown along Dickinson Road with 2 access points, and so both of these access points kind of mirror what's existing across the road. So you can see this is an existing access point, and this is an existing access point. So having those across from that makes it a safer entryway versus having them offset. As it relates to the parking standards within county code state it is 1 space per employee and 1 space per 10 children. A calculation was done for 25 employees and 189 children, which equates to 44 parking spaces that were required, and 45 are shown on the plan. So they are well within that requirement. And then, as mentioned again, you can see that those are the parking is pushed away from the existing residential houses. So it's abutting that roadway. There was a traffic impact study that was performed, and as a result of that, it was determined that there are no road improvements required with this development. And there's also a site distance variance that was required with this development for these access points, and that was approved by our Department of Public Works. There is a sign that's proposed, and it's going to be located between those 2 entrances. You can see the sign here, so different iterations of, depending on how you look at it. And the sign itself will be 8 feet tall and about 9 feet wide. And the materials and colors are going to mirror the building itself, so board and batten, stone veneer, and whatnot. There's also going to be lights proposed throughout the site as I move through here. So mainly around the parking area, there will be freestanding lights, and a photometric plan will be provided within the final plan set. It's not required at concept level, but we do want to at least see where those lights are shown. And so the project itself was taken and presented to our Design and Architectural Review Committee. So they're an advisory group that provide feedback for site development projects such as this one. And they did have 3 recommendations. So the first one being With its abutting existing residences, they recommended a more residential style building to be placed, so that it's an easier transition between the existing neighborhood and the commercial side of this area. They also recommended a parapet to hide those items on the roof. So with it being a flat roof, if I go back here, they're worried about some of those items, any type of HVAC system or anything like that. Having that on the roof's edge would help hide those features from motorists and passerbys. And then finally, they recommended additional screening along the residential properties. So if I go back to our landscape plan here, you can see that landscaping is shown throughout the site, but it mainly abuts those existing residential and school properties. So kind of the perimeter of the development. These areas back here are existing forests that will be retained. So one in this corner and another one in this corner here. Landscaping was reviewed by the landscape specialist, and they did receive concept approval. So everything being proposed aligns with code requirement, or I should say manual requirements. So there's no issues on that front, at least from a county standpoint. Forest conservation will be addressed by off-site forest banking, and that has also received concept approval. Site compliance has deemed that everything proposed is ADA compliant. The Bureau of Utilities has granted approval of the plan with proposed water and sewer connections. The zoning administration has approved the plan. Stormwater management has granted concept approval, and stormwater management will be addressed by bioretention facilities, an underground detention facility, and non-rooftop disconnects to a grass channel. Now, one item to note, you see the stormwater management facility, so this light green here on the east side of the property, and you also see this pipe that runs onto the school property. So there is an agreement that's going to be placed on the edge of the middle school property that will essentially run, again, along the edge, kind of cut through the property and make its way to an existing forest conservation easement on the school property. Those conversations have already been had, and easements have already been put in place for that piping. And the last thing I will mention is, as with any site development plan, this project will be reviewed and tested for adequacy of public facilities. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, such as the development team with us. Thank you.
Just a couple comments. We took to heart the recommendations from the architectural board, but we had some practical difficulty, and I should let the architects take over from this point. But in general, we came to the conclusion that it was difficult to make a 13,000 square foot building look like a residential structure without making it look like an apartment complex. Because it's a daycare school facility, there are a lot of requirements for ingress and egress. Almost every classroom, almost every space within the building has its own separate door for emergency egress and ingress and egress. So instead of trying to make it look residential, we did the next best thing, which is transition to the residential zone. We have a school on one side, residents on the other, so we opted to make the architecture look like a school in hopes of creating that community transition. And as I said, the architect is here to answer any questions about building materials, colors, and anything you'd like to add.
I can just make note of some of the items that we do have present on the building here. The windows and doors and the awnings above them, those are provided at each classroom for direct egress, like we mentioned. They also are residential in nature. They speak to the architectural scale, the human scale. We try to provide that parapet, like was requested in the other item noted by the board. The RTUs, the rooftop units you see in this image here, would be screened by the existing or the proposed parapet here. What we're seeing in the 2D does have a projection that would maybe suggest that you could see it from the road, but that is not the case. Based on the shape of our roof and where they're located, a pedestrian would not be able to see anything on the roof, so we're happy to say that that item should be satisfied. Some of the other items that we feel are residential in nature are the board and batten hardy siding that we have here, as well as the stone base. We have the gable roof at the main entrance. We try to use those elements to suggest where new parents need to come when they visit the school for the first time. It really speaks to the entrance of the building. We've got the signage there that is illuminated, and the monument sign as well. All of those items are matching in their materials. And if there are any other questions, I'm happy to discuss. Do we happen to have the rendering available today? Okay, well,
I
we
think-
could,
Yeah, there is a isometric view in some of the plans that were sent to the commission. Unfortunately, I don't know if we updated our link, so it's not on the board, but essentially, that gives us a pretty good
Mhm.
idea of what's proposed.
You won't be able to see it the way it's.
And Mark Keeley's here. I don't know, Mark, if you have any comments regarding the traffic study.
Yeah, I mean, I can, if the commission has any questions, I can answer. Just real quick, we did scope out the traffic study limits with the county last October. The county identified 6 off-site intersections, and then we studied the 2 site access points onto Dickinson Road. Just real quick, the study intersections, in case if you're interested, are Maryland 32 at Johnsonville at Bennett, which is quite a distance from the school, but that was an important intersection for the county to look at. And then following along, we examined Oklahoma Road at Bennett, and then 26 at Hemlock, West Hemlock, 26 at Oklahoma Road, West Oklahoma at Dickinson, Oklahoma Road at Dickinson, and then the Oklahoma at Bennett. So I think I said that one twice, and then the 2 site access points. All the intersections under the future traffic conditions, which means the full build out of the daycare, operated at C or better levels of service. There is a caveat, though. The county requires, if there's any movement within an intersection that is an E level service or F, you have to provide mitigation, even though the overall delay is D or better. So that was the case at 26 at West Hemlock. So we looked at that intersection a little bit more in detail and found that if we just optimize the signal timing there, that we could get all approaches to the intersection to work at a D or better, which we did. So we'll work with State Highway to look to optimize the timing at that intersection. But in terms of physical road improvements, there weren't any. The site does generates about 150 trips in the peak hour, AM and PM. So it's roughly 79 inbound trips and 70 outbound. So that's parent pickup, drop off and pickup. So it's not a large traffic generator.
But it's all generated at the same time, so is this, are these roads then, are you allowing for access lanes, turn lanes, so that, in other words, if there's 180 students there, your hours are the same, so
Can I
are you
speak
gonna
to
have
that?
180 people showing up and 180 people
Can I-
picking
okay.
up? I mean,
Just to
how-
speak to the
give me an
pickup and
idea
drop
how
off.
that all works,
Yeah,
because-
so with Primrose, our operational hours are 6:30 to 6:30, and we find that we have a window of time where there's no required pickup and drop off times at our schools. So we find that the parents are typically dropping off between 6:30 and 9:30 is where we have our peak, but they do drop off and pick up throughout the day. So
Okay.
there are no clusters of time or queuing issues at our schools. We find that parents tend to spend about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes in the lot while they're walking to the classroom and then returning to their vehicles.
The reason I asked the question, at some of the public schools, I mean, there are traffic jams on major roads.
Right.
With people just backing up traffic, waiting to get in line for their students. And
Yes.
that's what, as close as that is to a major roadway here, I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, it's not something that we find at our schools because of the nature of the pickup and drop-off flexibility with parents.
I'm being educated here. The other thing is you have at least 3 stormwater ponds on that property. They're all fenced, right?
Well, the children are fenced into the building, I'll say that. So we do have secure exit points along the whole building. The only place that is not fenced in is our main entrance. And that's when parents or, there's never staff or children moving through that door unless they're at pickup or drop-off of parents.
And it helps the operational procedure that Primrose puts in place. There isn't a drop-off. You don't just drop your child off. You have to park and walk your
Bring your
child
child
into
in.
the building. So that alleviates the queuing where, one child's being dropped off and someone's waiting behind them to pull up to that same spot and drop off a child. So that would alleviate a lot of the queuing problems
Is
that
Prim-
get back into Dickinson Road.
Is Primrose part of a network of schools? Is it a national? Okay.
Yes. We have about 500 that's already been constructed. Primrose has been around for, I think this is their 40th year.
So you mentioned that the roof, the equipment on the roof, you won't be able to see. Is that because the frontage or the sides of the roof are extended up a little
Yes,
bit?
so
It's
we.
like a pit?
Yeah, the elevation of that main portion of the building is 18 feet, but the roof itself is actually lower than that, and it slopes to the backside of our building. Our rooftop units are centrally located on our roof, so they're even lower than at our front elevation's highest point. And what we find is when you're standing on the ground, even at the farthest point away from the building, the perspective of the individual, you're not going to be able to see those items on the roof.
Thank you.
I do want to go back to Hemlock and 26, if I could, the traffic there. Because, and it's not just Primrose, right? There's a Wendy's going on right here to the left. Fortunately, the businesses that are in those 2 facilities across the street from you, they are, I wouldn't call them morning activities. Activities that there's a Sherwin-Williams and, the Cork is there, the restaurant. I believe I've seen Richard there once. Not that you go to places called the Cork a lot. Anyway, I am wondering if a right turn lane is not needed by somebody to somewhere to get people off of Hemlock, out of Hemlock onto 26, because there's a left turn, there would be a left turn lane and then a straight through to Walmart and a right turn lane to turn right onto 26. Because there's going to be a lot going on with Wendy's and Primrose there. There's a lot going on that I think we can anticipate. So can you walk us through what you're seeing at that intersection?
Yeah, so each approach is controlled by the traffic signal. The southbound West Hemlock has, it's a right turn and it's a left and a through right.
Right. Correct.
Yeah, so the right turns, again, that movement, because it's a shared through right, it's controlled by the signal. And then what we found is if there's some minor signal timing optimization, that approach can operate within acceptable delays.
Okay. So in your opinion, is
Yeah, and the Wendy's restaurant, I mean, that primarily, that's a business that does,
Lunch and dinner?
yeah, lunch and dinner, but it's also pass-by traffic, so it's, you're capturing traffic from 26, so it's inbound and outbound traffic. The daycare trips, I mean, so I'm bound by the ITE trip generation manual, so I have to show, you know, that what I discussed earlier, the 70 inbound trips and 70 outbound trips occurring within a peak hour, but, I mean, that's typically not the way daycares operate, because, I mean, there's not a homeroom where you have to be there at a specific time like a school, so the trips are more spread out. So I think the traffic study is actually more conservative than what's going to happen when the school is open, because the trips are going to be metered or spaced out.
Okay.
Parent drop-off. So, so I think that intersection should continue to operate within acceptable standards.
Okay.
And then if I can add also that the right turn, which I think has the E-level or service or from Hemlock onto 26, that would really only impact the morning trips. That the evening trips would be a little less susceptible. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the evening trips would be a little less susceptible to that turning movement, you know, because people will be coming in, picking up their child, and then wouldn't necessarily go out that way. They would be heading home or something, you know.
All right, and then, let's see, what was the last question I had is, first of all, I think this is a terrific use for this location. I'll say it out loud. You know, I live in this community, and I think this is a great use, and I think the service is definitely needed. We're going to have a sidewalk across the face of this property?
Yes, there's a sidewalk currently in front of the property.
Okay.
And we will make it ADA compliant, provide ADA compliance into the site. And then we will have a sidewalk around the building as well.
Okay.
So, there is the Beatty property that's coming back into, I think it's Rolling View community. Will that impact West Hemlock because they'll be coming out that way, or Georgetown? So would that increase traffic? Any thoughts?
I think that's further up 26, closer.
No, you can come in there.
You can come in there?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Oh, I see it. You're exactly right. From Rolling Drive.
Yeah.
Rolling View.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, and that's
Way to be.
a pretty good number of homes that'll be added there.
There's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's all good, okay? But, you know, we're focused on the issue here, and I'll just, you know, timing of optimizing the timing of a light, okay? I'm listening, but I gotta tell you, there's a lot going on. So hang in there with us while we think through this, because I know you're dealing with this property. You know, we've also got Wendy's, we've got Beatty. So somewhere with you know, there's a Manhattan project that is probably above the scope of what you've been hired to do, but we need to pay attention to as a commission. So, I don't know.
A lot of the Beatty property would go out onto 32 through Progress Way.
So if I may too, so
Not that section though.
the Beatty property, so all 4 of those proposals there is a traffic impact study for that as well. And the way the design manual is written, my understanding is that once a project is approved, you have to then either update your traffic impact study or make sure that that approved development does not have an adverse impact on what was already studied. And so there's always that fighting spot to kind of get through before the next guy.
Exactly.
Because then
Exactly.
you don't have to update your stuff.
Exactly.
So if this goes through, assuming before the Beatty property, then we would look for them to update their count to make sure that whatever they're adding onto it, either this optimization of the light timing is adequate enough for them as well, or they would then be on the hook to kind of provide mitigation for whatever that may be.
So David, are you the bull in the china shop who's going to make sure that, he's talking to the Beatty people talking to the Wendy's people, and they're all talking to you so that you, when you come to us, you can give us a good sense that we've got control of this and we're not creating, an intersection that is going to fail? I mean, so we're cool?
I'm not the bull, but I am the messenger.
Okay.
So
we need a bull. We want
I'm not going to call anyone a bull, but there are people at the county that will make sure that everybody's playing nice with each other, especially as it relates to traffic.
And this study, the study for the Primrose did include the Wendy's as a background and a car wash, and then we also include growth rates that are compounded over the project build-out period.
David, you don't have to be the bull. Just don't be the lamb, all right?
Yeah. Ralph?
I'm fine.
Nothing?
I think it's great, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if I could ask, and I don't know if there's any public comments.
Sure, Pete.
But we would respectfully request that we obtain concept plan approval and that the chairman could sign off on the plans, so we wouldn't need a second planning commission meeting, if that's possible.
We'll leave that up to our chairman.
No,
Madam
no,
Chair?
no. It's a joint decision. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so since we're asking for that, let's pull up the plan one more time and to tell us about the landscaping between the property and the residential. Let's dig in here just so that we can get you where you want to be. What's going on in the exterior property of the property lines that are adjacent to the?
Sure, yes. We're going to have extensive landscaping around the property, and within the property for that matter. So we have a landscaping plan on one of these sheets. One of these 22 sheets is a landscaping plan. Here it is, sheet 5. And so the county requirement is for perimeter landscaping. Typically, you provide landscaping around the perimeter. We have two areas where we're going to essentially save the existing forest, which are at the two corners of the property. And then we will provide Class A screening for the most part around all the perimeters. The screening will be, we've selected for the most part, I guess evergreen screening, so that the screen will be year-round. We had, at our TRC meeting, we had one of our neighbors had asked us about beefing up the screening against her property. And so where we abutted the residential zone, we kind of pulled some of the screening back from the property line up onto the hill just to provide more of a screen. And also we would retain the woods between their property and our property where we could. And so we listened to the comments of the neighbors, and we did provide extensive screening. We, just to give you an idea, we had a total required planning of 61 planning units, and we provided 73 planting units. So we did create, I believe, the buffers that would be necessary to keep our neighbors happy. And the school too wants a little bit of privacy to deaden the sound. I mean, the kids are outside, there's play areas. The play areas will be artificial turf, and there will be slides and things for the children to play with on. So everything will be fenced in, and there's a number of employees, so we shouldn't have any issues with children running around the property. They will be in designated areas and carefully supervised. With respect to other aspects of the property, we've also provided additional landscaping. I know we had some comments that the county site inspector had some concerns about children coming out of the school and getting into the stormwater management facilities, the microbiome retentions. So on the east side of the property, we added a row of, kind of a hedge row to kind of keep the children out of the stormwater management facilities, which I can tell you as a kid, that's where I would go. But,
So Pete, excuse me. So the storm water management, that's inside the fence or outside the fence?
that would be outside of the fences.
Okay, but even outside of the fence, is there fencing around those? Or,
No, there is not. What we have with respect to stormwater management is we have 5 microbiome retention facilities. And these facilities typically have 3-to-1 slopes. And above them, I think I've graded everything with a 4-to-1 slope. So there's not a significant slope that someone could fall and roll down into the facilities. They're gentle slopes with respect to access, and the landscape perimeters should keep other children from the school, for example, from the other school from crossing into this property. And then with respect to the play areas, they are completely fenced in. And as I said, the children will be supervised, so. The microbiome retentions will be planted. So you have a sand soil mix, and then we plant typically flowers and perennials. They in themselves will provide some landscaping appeal.
If I may add too, these microbiome retention facilities, they are dry facilities.
Okay.
So although after a rain, I believe there's a requirement that any standing water in those facilities has to vacate, I believe within 48, 72 hours, something like that. So there's a set number of time where they are allowed to have standing water, again, after a storm. But for the most part, these are dry facilities. So if any kids get in there, assuming not right after a storm, it should just be dry. So no concern of drowning or anything like that.
David, you mentioned this is a wooded area.
It currently is, yes.
So you have forest mitigation going on.
That's right.
Could you explain how that would work?
So my understanding is that
We would buy into a tree bank to satisfy.
So you're applying to a tree bank,
satisfy-
acre per acre, is that how that works?
I'm sorry.
It's more than acre per acre, isn't it? In other words, if you take out 10 acres of forest, you replace it with,
The way I believe it works, and we have a designated forester for this, but I believe once you disturb 20,000 square feet of forest, you replace at a 1-to-1 ratio.
1-to-1, okay.
1 after that. threshold is exceeded. So there's a forest conservation plan, and I can tell you what our planning requirements are. So for this project, well, it says here, afforestation may be addressed by retaining in an easement forest that is within the net tract area. So what happened was, at one point in time, this property was not forested. It just has not been mowed for, I'm gonna say 20 years or so. And so the forest grew up. And according to the forest conservation computations, there's a net tract area of roughly, I think it's 15% for areas zoned commercial. So given what we're retaining and what's being cleared, I misspoke. We are not providing tree bank credits. We are retaining enough forest on site, believe it or not, to satisfy the requirement.
One comment. I really like the project where it sits close to the school, got a good access points, at least to Hemlock and whatever the other one is. The only concern I would have is definitely it's having enough, being the neighbors that live around it now have trees there. And the two houses, the second one on Hemlock and the second one on, Hemlock, definitely are gonna have a lot more noise now than they did before because they're the closest ones. So I would definitely make sure you had plenty of screening in those areas to help buffer the kids out playing from those people that have never had any noise behind them ever. I'm sure if anyone was gonna comment on it, it would be those neighbors, but just do the best you can.
Anything?
Yeah, I have no objection for the chairman to make the final decision after we hear it. Is there any public comment?
Right, okay. All right, and you announced all of
Yes.
it. Okay, so, I will open it for public comment. If anyone would like to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and address. Okay. Oh.
I'd like to speak. My name is Scott Miller. I own the property in question here. My partner and I do. I'd like to address the commissioner's concern about the intersection. The call box for Wendy's is on the east side of the building. The pickup is on the west side of the building, and that parallels West Hemlock. I think it would be reasonable to expect the people that would be coming into Wendy's, go to the call box, wrap around, come out, are going to go right onto Liberty Road from the right in, right out at Carroll Station as it is right now. It would be a little obtuse of them, in my judgment, for them to pull around, pull out, and then go out the back of Wendy's, the back of Wendy's onto West Hemlock to go west on Liberty Road, when it would be a lot easier to just come right to the pickup window, go right across in front of the 1708 building, and right out onto Liberty Road to go west on Liberty. That makes sense.
It does make sense, but you haven't met me and people like me driving. So there you go.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. Hearing none.
So make a motion to pass final approval on to the chair.
I would second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. You got it?
Good luck.
Roll.
Huh?
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll. Yeah. Thank you. Number 9. Final subdivision plan. FX 230003 Bradley's Overlook. David, you're up.
Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome, Madam Chair. David, Bureau of Development Review. So this project you all should be fairly familiar with. I believe this may be the 4th iteration in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. In case you are not familiar, this is down in the Eldersburg area. This is called Bradley's Overlook. File number FX230003. There are some representatives of the project here who I will let introduce themselves.
Rob Scranton with CBI Homes.
Linda Alexander with CLSI.
And what this project is proposing is a 4-lot residential subdivision. This is in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission as a final plan. And so we are looking for 2 actions today, which is approval of Chapter 155 and Chapter 156. Typically, final plans do not come back before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I'll get into it a little later in the report as to why we are here now. So again, this is down in the Eldersburg area. This is Cherry Tree Lane here. Cherry Tree Lane. This is 26, and this is 32. So you can see the site is highlighted in this orange. And so moving to the site itself, you see that there is a stream which cuts through the property. There are various steep slopes surrounding this stream. You can see most of the site is wooded with this open area here, which used to be an equestrian center. The property itself is right around 30 acres. I believe it's 35 acres, give or take. And it is outside the water and sewer master plan service area. So any lots on this property and on surrounding properties is well and septic. So to kind of orient everybody on this, because the plan itself is shifted a little bit, this is Cherry Tree right here. Okay, so if we move forward, this is Cherry Tree down here. So we rotated it a little bit. But again, what is being proposed is a 4-lot residential plan, and this is a cluster plan. And the lots themselves range from 1.75 acres up to 2 acres. This relieves the resulting land, or essentially what's left over, at right around 27, 28 acres, give or take. And you can see most of the lot, actually all the lots that are proposed are on the northeast corner of the property in that existing open area. There is an open space that's required as it relates to this cluster plan, and that easement area is going to be on this resulting land, or the land that's left over. There is 4.37 acres that's required, and this easement area is going to be 4.46, so they exceed that requirement there. So if we zoom in on what's being proposed, here are the 4 lots, and these lots are going to be accessed by Cherry Tree Lane via this shared driveway, which is known as Kennard Drive. There is going to be a declaration of maintenance obligation, so all 4 of these users will have to provide their fair share of maintenance for this driveway. And there was a waiver that was requested, I believe for site distance, that was approved by the Department of Public Works. The resulting lands, or the land that's left over, is going to be a buildable lot, and that house will have its own private driveway, give or take in this area, that will be access to Cherry Tree Lane. So the property, kind of a history of the project. It went to the Technical Review Committee back in 2019. At that time, there were 4 citizens who voiced concerns of stormwater management on the property as well as soil erosion. Moving forward, October in 2020, it went before the Planning and Zoning Commission as a concept plan. Following that meeting, the developer and the engineer had changed, and with that change came a change of design, which is what you're seeing now. In May of 2023, the project was brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission as a special report of a cluster plan, where it was requested that the plan have authorization to cluster, which it did receive from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And almost a year ago today, so October 2023, it came before the Planning and Zoning Commission as a preliminary plan in which it received approval of Chapter 155, but conditional approval of Chapter 156. And so, trying not to get too far ahead into Chapter 156, as it relates to Chapter 155, we are seeking approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission for this development, and there are 12 conditions of approval that I'm not going to read all of, but they mostly relate to easements that are required that are going to come to the county, easements that are required that are private, such as the declaration of maintenance obligations, and then some other conditions of approval as it relates to the preliminary plan, expiration and whatnot. So if there's no further questions as it relates to that, I'll move forward within the Chapter 156 concurrency management side of this report. All right. So as mentioned, about a year ago today, so August 17th last year, it was brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission as a preliminary plan, and at that time, public facilities was tested for the proposed 4 lots. And everything was deemed adequate. The only inadequacy was related to the fire district. So response times as it relates to the fire district was exceeding 8 minutes. And with that, it was deemed approaching inadequate. A year later, those numbers were rerun. So this is within the Gamber Fire District. And looking at the data between September 2022 and August 2024, the late and no response stat data indicates that of the first due total fire calls in the Gamber District, 0% were categorized as no responses and 9.4% as late and no responses. So for that section, it was deemed adequate. With regard to fire call average response time for the same 2-year period, Gamber had an average response time of 8 minutes and 16 seconds. So that is considered approaching inadequate because it exceeds that 8-minute threshold of the adequacy. And along with that, so fire also looks at the primary route from the fire hall to the site, and it was determined that it does not include travel over bridges that cannot adequately contain, fire and EMS apparatus. So that was perfectly fine. So, and rerunning this data, we are still seeing an approaching inadequate designation. The average response time number is less than it was when it was tested a year ago, but it is still over that threshold. So it is still approaching inadequate. However, we are still before the Planning and Zoning Commission seeking a conditional approval of this plan as it relates to Chapter 156. And there are 4 conditions of approval, which we recommend along with that. And so we're looking for final approval as it relates to Chapter 155 and conditional approval as it relates to Chapter 156. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. We all have that, right? Okay. All right. Any questions, Steve?
No, not on that. So access to Cherry Tree, is that off a Clee Mill?
No.
Yeah, so if we move back, Cherry Tree runs down, or I should say runs up and hooks and gets onto Bartholow.
Bartholow. Oh, okay. I know where it is. So,
But if you would be heading towards Gamber, just as an example, like the Gamber Fire Hall folks,
Right.
they'd come down 32, drop onto London Bridge Road, and then come down to Cherry Tree and get here.
okay.
So
Lee Mill was be a little
we
bit
are,
more-
we are kind of at the very edge of where their area would be.
That's what I was thinking. I
yeah.
was worrying about Clee Mill, because that's not a.
Yeah, they wouldn't be coming,
That's
they
coming
would,
from the other, that's coming from the west.
yeah.
That's not good for fire trucks.
But Bartholow.
That's how I get there.
Yeah,
From Mount Airy.
Yeah, me too.
I would think it was almost, we're sitting almost on the line between Gamber and where the other one, you know, I'm not even, I mean, I guess Gamber would get the fire call, but
Right.
we're really close to the other one.
Sykesville.
Sykesville, yeah.
Yeah, you're-
Which is even more clear, bigger roads coming in than what Gamber would have coming in.
Right.
So it's like almost on the corner of
Yeah, we're getting
Bartholomew.
close, yeah,
Yeah, it's probably half a mile from Bartholow.
yeah.
Right.
That far?
Not even, yeah.
No.
Quarter mile.
No, we're probably even, yeah, they were probably a half a mile out from Bartholomew Road that way, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other? No?
No.
Okay. Hearing nothing from them, I'll open it for public comment. Does anybody wish to speak? No? Okay. Then,
I'll make a motion.
okay.
I'll
you
make a
do it.
motion on 155. I make a motion that we approve Chapter 155, the project for Chapter 155, along with the 12 requirements associated with that 155 section.
And subject to the conditional approval of 156?
That should be
That's two
separate, right?
separate,
Oh, okay.
isn't it? Or do you?
Do you want it in
Two
one?
separate?
It's
right?
typically two separate.
Yeah, I
yes.
would,
My bad,
Yeah.
my bad.
Okay.
that's why
I'll second
people are
that.
looking at me, yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Any additional comments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any disapprove? No? Okay. You are good for that. Hang on.
Hang on. So I'll motion that we, I'm looking for my notes, approve the subdivision, Bradley's Overlook subdivision plan for Chapter 156, along with the 4 conditional requirements, or conditional approval, I guess it should be. Do I have to say that again?
No.
Good.
Okay.
Okay,
Second.
okay. We have a motion, a second. Any conversation? Nope. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that sounded unanimous, but nobody against, okay? So we are approved and approved with conditional requirements, so. I think that's it. Is that it?
That's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay. Thank you. Good luck.
You can go home now.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm gonna take that to the bank.
Okay. Moving right along, number
David. Thank
10.
Good job, David.
Yes. Ms. Weber,
Mouthful he had.
how are you?
All righty. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Up today, as you can see, is a Westminster annexation. We do have Andrea Gearhard in the audience from the City of Westminster for any subsequent questions that you all may have. This annexation does not require a zoning waiver, so we are here just for an informational briefing and any comments that you would like to relay to the county commissioners. So this annexation area is owned by High Falcon Realty. It's approximately 6.2 acres along Maryland 140. It's currently the Len Stoller property, if that puts it into perspective. Here on the left-hand map, you can see that we are inside the municipal growth area for the city of Westminster. And then here, zoom in, you can see how we relate to the current corporate limits of the city of Westminster. This shows that we are adjacent, not creating an enclave. And then again, Maryland 140 to the north. As I said previously, this is currently improved with a vehicle sales lot and vehicle repair shop. It's my understanding after reading through the annexation materials that the owner wants to expand with a car wash. So the reason for annexation is they need to increase their water capacity for that additional use. Currently, with the county, the annexation area is zoned commercial high, the entire parcel. And with the city of Westminster, they have requested to be placed into the business zoning district. So as I said at the beginning, because the uses and intensities are similar in the county's C3 district and the city's business zoning district, there is no zoning waiver required. The designated land use for the annexation area is commercial, taken from the City of Westminster's 2009 comprehensive plan. And this designated land use is consistent with the requested zoning. We are in the existing service category for water and the existing and no plan service for sewer. But as I said previously, this area is served by both water and sewer. So as always, we send the annexation petition out for any county comments. We receive none. Planning staff, though, is recommending the city give public notice by posting the property prior to the public hearing to notify all adjoining property owners. And we are set to present this to the county commissioners next Thursday, October 24th. And that's it.
Okay. Any comments, thoughts?
The only question I had when I was preparing was, what's the benefit, but you explained it well.
Thank you.
Water.
Water.
I would ask, will this in any way improve the situation where we've got semis on the shoulder unloading cars? It will not improve it in any way?
From my understanding, they might have to go through another development site plan. So I'm not sure if that's something they would look at that time.
Yeah, no, it's just a point of, every time I drive past it, there's a semi loaded with cars and they're out there, taking them all, but they're doing it in the emergency lane. You would think that they would be able to, I don't know, somebody will be able to fix that.
Maybe not.
That's for the Jeep one?
Yep.
That came up when, when the Jeep dealership was being discussed a couple of years ago, and they had said that they were going to do that. They were building enough turnaround in their lot to stay off that emergency strip.
It's, okay.
I'm just saying, I remember that pretty clearly.
I'm all for selling Jeeps, whatever, but I'm just saying.
It's a safe, well, that was the discussion. It was a safety thing.
Yeah.
There's,
You just don't want them to unload there.
Right.
You can sell them.
Right.
I agree with you, though. That is a safety problem.
That's a thing, right?
Yeah,
It needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
It should be addressed.
So I guess when you see that on the site plan eventually, we need to make sure
There's a no
that
unloading
is
sign.
there and they are following what they said they would do.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that'll be later in the process.
right. Yeah, it won't stop them now.
No, I,
So, just,
So do I ask if Hannah's gonna be the bull in the china shop?
sure.
You're good, Hannah. You got this.
Westminster, just so they can come to you.
I won't do it. I won't do it.
yeah,
Oh, I know
that's
Westminster.
Westminster. Andrea, you have to put a sign out there, no unloading.
Yeah.
I should, I don't know.
Also, we can put that as a comment, like we can talk about that when they put in their simplified site plan. Most likely, I don't know that it would have to come back through county development, only because the property is already impervious and there probably won't be much stormwater or forest conservation that's required. But that's something we can definitely talk about at the city level.
You know, it's probably institutional habit, you know, the driver's used to coming up there and parking there, and they probably have done everything they're supposed to do. They just need to make sure the truckers understand it, but again, it's
Oh,
above
you
our
are
pay
so
grade.
kind.
No, that's above our pay grade, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Tom will fix it.
Simple
Well, in case they didn't let them know, maybe they will.
Junk.
Okay, so that was just for information, so
Thank you. Yeah.
you are good. Thank you
I
very
do,
much.
I just do have a quick question. You said a car wash. Are you talking about just for the purpose of the dealership, right? So it's not a public car wash, it's for
Correct.
the purpose of,
From
okay,
my
I just wanna
understanding.
make that clear. I wouldn't,
They still need more water, so.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
You buy a car, you probably get free car wash.
It's either to sell a clean Jeep or a
Life.
dirty
Free
Jeep.
car wash for life.
Yeah, there you go.
Given what cars cost today, I don't think that's unreasonable.
Right.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Um,
I'm disappointed that that was
We can, was there any public comment? I'm sorry. Oh, yep, there was.
My name's Kim Hartman, and my address is 711 Redwood Drive. I've recently contacted Commissioner Gordon and the Bureau of Environmental Health about the construction of a septic sand mound system for a new home behind our property in Walnut Ridge, which actually was just shown on that site map because we're just back from where the dealership is. I've never seen anything like this sand mound system. It's 60-foot long, 4-foot tall wall that we now look at from our kitchen, our dining room, our sunroom, our patio. I have photos if you all would like to see them, but photos really don't even show the justice to see what this looks like in our backyard. You have to see it to appreciate the eyesore that it's created, as well as the potential stormwater drainage problems. When we saw how close the stakes were to our property, I immediately called to question the location, because this new property is like over 1.6 acres. The environmental health inspector, during a conversation before the construction even started, said that it would be an eyesore. And now is the time that this can be corrected. It's not too late. There are other options. We have city water. Those 4 new houses could be connected to the city water, and then they could have a traditional septic system in the ground like what we have. They just put 225 homes in the Stonegate neighborhood adjacent to us, and they're all connected to the city water. The other option would be to put their sand mound system on one of the other approved sites that are on their property that are further down the hill and would be less intrusive. And it would eliminate any potential drainage problems onto our property and toward our shed. And even if the current system was built deeper into the ground where it is, it wouldn't be an eyesore or cause potential drainage problems. And interestingly, the septic sand mound system that was put in the model home that's on the corner to our development is very discreetly integrated into the ground and is unnoticeable. And I understand that your decisions impact a lot of people, and it's impossible to satisfy everyone. I heard from the 2 gentlemen earlier who aren't happy about plans behind their house. But I'm pretty certain that none of you would have approved this in your backyard, especially when there are other alternatives. And the other alternatives would meet the community expectations and be consistent with the neighborhood. There's nothing else that looks like this in our neighborhood or the adjacent neighborhoods to us. And we bought this house over 20 years ago for the property and our open view and the outdoor space. And this change has just diminished our enjoyment of the property. And my husband is like insisting that he wants to move because every time he looks outside, we now see this septic wall. So I just would, as a lifelong resident and taxpayer of Carroll County, I just think we deserve to be heard and have this corrected now while it's not too late. And when you know that you can reassess a past decision and make it right and correct it in the future. I didn't want those two gentlemen to go through this same thing. It's not too late to correct this now. I'd invite any of you to come the 2 miles to my house and stand in my yard and just look at what I'm looking at of this septic sand mound system.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to make a quick comment. I know this isn't a question and answer back and forth, but if I can, we've obviously got some other things still on the agenda, but I would like to take a minute and come over and talk to you real briefly. I'm going to step away from up here, and I will come out if available tomorrow and take a look at that. So
Absolutely.
let me step away for a second. I'll come out and talk to you.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, so this is a sand mound for the septic, correct?
And I would say to look at a little box on a
Right.
plot drawing that says septic, you wouldn't have any idea. I had no idea. I haven't seen anything like this anywhere. And I drive all around the county. I ride my
Yeah.
bike all around the county and in Pennsylvania. I've seen septic sand mound systems. I've never seen something like this.
Yeah,
And I wouldn't know it from a drawing
Yeah.
to even
So-
complain about it.
I know your community has water, public water, but
Right.
not sewer, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And what is your address again, please?
711 Redwood Drive.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Brian Schroeder. I live at 709 Redwood Drive next door. And I can just say that, back to the consistency's sake, when they started to do the construction, they built the system into the hill. We sit on top of the hill overlooking Len Stoller. The reason they do the car thing is they have no room. They park all their inventory on the grass in the field. They've rented places all around the city and parked all their inventory. So there's nowhere for their truck to turn around and offload because they have too much inventory in the small space. So we oversee that also. And then we also see the farm that's next to it that people have been complaining about, that we're talking about eyesores. I don't think we approved a land dump along 140 of that farm that's there. And I know other people have complained about that. But I'm really here about the sand system, that there's 4 lots. And so they potentially could put 4 more of these hills that border our property, and they've chosen to put them all the way on the edge. So they're meeting the 10-foot setback, but they're taller than I am. They're 6 feet tall by 60 feet long. So I just want to reiterate that this is what we're looking at, and their potential that if no one does anything, that they'll probably put 4 more of these mounds across those lots that were approved.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the limited knowledge I have of county and health department on that actually falls under the health department for the sand mounds. But something certainly to look at. When I leave here today, I'll drive by and take a look, not that.
So is it, Janice, and I'll look at our attorney, is it appropriate for us to talk about this out loud, or do we need to adjourn and go in the back room and talk about what our recommendation is to our commissioners? Because it would seem.
I'm not sure that this conversation would fall under the sort of thing you could close for.
There you go. Okay, so I'll just say
I'd be
that.
much more comfortable with you having this
Yeah,
conversation.
so
in
I just want to make sure, because we did something a while back, and I'm not sure we did it right, and so we'll just do it here.
All right, leave that alone.
Yeah,
You don't ever talk about that.
Yeah, don't talk about that. So is this one of those things where we should recommend to the commission that they hold up the annex because Lynn Stoller wants water, but they've done something to county residents that, is kind of creating an adverse situation? I mean, what did we do?
Two different things.
No.
Yeah, it's two
no,
different things.
This,
Is it? Okay.
what
It's a Westminster thing,
these people are talking about is a separate issue from
Okay,
Len
thank you.
Stoller.
All right.
Yeah, I don't think they're,
Yeah.
they're
They just happen to be close.
proximate,
Right.
but they're different issues.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate it. I thought it was Lynn Stoller.
Yeah, no, this
No, this
is,
is- those
if
are the
you
lots.
travel down Old Westminster Road, you would turn right on,
So
Walnut Ridge, and Walnut Ridge is an older development, and that one little area, my understanding is that those four lots
right, and
were
it's,
relatively recently created.
right, and
So
the first,
who does it benefit, the septic?
it benefits the
It's the individual property owner.
So-
Apparently, they might not perk or whatever. I'm not
Right,
familiar with
so
that.
it's just, when they try to perk, it doesn't perk conventional, so the alternative would be a sand mound system.
But
if
I think
it
there's
worked.
multiple kinds of sand mound
Right.
systems too, so
So.
that's where I stop.
Yeah, so I don't
I
know.
apologize. I thought this was a sand mound system behind Lynn Stoller.
No.
I apologize.
I
I'm,
said-
never
I was
mind.
with you, I thought that too.
I apologize. I was, yeah.
And the premise is, it pumps in, up, down, and then it percolates down through, so.
Somewhere else where it's
but
better.
I don't know.
I'm a city girl.
So my question would be, I know, the health department regulates the kind of systems.
Right.
But how about the setback from the property lines on a larger lot? Could they be, is that something we control, or is that still, health department controls the setbacks of how far they can, like she's saying, it's 10 foot away from, the back of their lot, and it's a 1.6 acre lot.
I don't, sitting here, I don't know the answer to that question. If, as part of your review of the development, if those setbacks are part of the site information that you get, or if that is what is reviewed by the health department and they say, here's our setbacks. We can find out. I just don't know enough to answer that right this minute.
Is this, what we're talking about, is this within the Westminster city boundary?
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's outside, it's just outside.
County.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I'm really messed up. Okay.
So I understand what she's talking about, definitely.
Yeah.
Because, I've done some perking before, and I
Yeah,
know what
you-
a pain in the butt it
You
is.
have some property.
But, yeah, I can understand that it's definitely an eyesore. It's something that happens, you go to Tawny Town, they're everywhere, because that's about the only
But
thing
are
that get
they
approved.
that height?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are up out of the ground. I haven't seen
Well-
too many that were sand mounds that were flush level. They're normally
No, no,
always,
I know they're not
That's why they
but
call 'em
6 feet
mounds.
high.
I thought she said
Yeah,
4.
they're-
Didn't
I
she
don't know,
say
one of these
6
folks said it
feet?
was like 6 feet
Yeah, the
tall.
gentleman said it was 6.
6'4", and it's taller than I am.
Holy
Okay.
Hannah.
She's saying 7 or 8.
And
Yeah.
there's pipes sticking.
Yeah, the pipes stick out of it.
That also.
Yeah.
And it's over, I believe, 45 or 50 feet in length. So we're not just talking,
the
like
whole
I say,
width of
they
the
chose to
property.
put it at the end of the property line, on us. And that picture there is, our property is up here on the hill. So this,
Hannah, can you put
where this lot's right here. This is
behind
our-
Redwood
this is our
Road there?
house is right here.
Yeah.
These two right here. And so, when you look down that hill, they've terraced out the bottom of the hill for the houses. And they put the sand mound on top of a hill of another hill. And so it's like doubling the effect of your view because it's not only a hill and then the sand mound's on top of the hill.
You can see where they perk.
It's those lots.
This is our house.
Those are the odd numbers
They're
on that
talking-
side of the street.
Okay.
Even numbers are on the other side of the street.
All right.
I understand, I don't know if it's anything we can do, or if it's
I don't think it's
something,
anything we can do.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
this
it's
is a health
something that they can
department
look at
issue.
for future at this
Yeah.
point, but.
Yeah, this is, yeah, I got nothing.
And I would say if you have a problem with runoff, you can go to would you go to soil conservation or just the county?
Chris?
Yeah, let's ask Chris.
Runoff would be.
Who do they go
You're
to if
sitting
they have a
back
problem
there.
with runoff?
I'd say water resource.
He thought he could
I
hide.
think you go to the county and then they go to Brian and then they get.
To soil conservation.
Yes, good morning. So if there's an issue or a concern about runoff or grading, that would come to our department, and our chief grading inspector, Tim Hare, did go out to the property and take a look at it. He did not feel that there was any concern regarding runoff.
Just a-
Just an
So it's a visual thing, if, all right. Well,
That affects your
Okay.
property.
I've got nothing.
Sorry, we don't have it resolved, but
I think we can look at the history of the development that we're talking about here and just give you a report on sort of what that process was and is, and what sorts of mitigation might be available at this point.
Okay.
And then we can provide that information to you.
okay. So, I'm sorry, the lady that spoke, did you hear the conversation that Ms. Daly just said about?
I'm sorry, that she's gonna look into it, or?
Do some more research.
We'll just do some more research on the specific development, where it is in the process, and sort of what factors went into the location of the sand mounds, and whether there are any mitigation measures that are available to us at this point.
Okay, I mean, because they do have alternative sites for it on their plan. And like I said, I mean, I came to a hearing here probably 15 years ago when they first were talking about building behind us to see what it was about. I don't have a problem with them putting a house behind me, but at no point did I ever think this would be the result of that. And I don't think any of you can even appreciate what this looks like without seeing it, because I've never seen anything like it. So
Okay.
I appreciate your time and listening, and hopefully we can do something to correct it.
Well,
Thank you.
The county will look into it, and they have your name, and Commissioner Gordon does, so
Absolutely.
we'll be able to correspond with you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional general comment? Okay. How about a 5-minute break? Okay. Hold on. There you go. Back in session, item 12, master plan work session, buildable land inventory and water and sewer planning. And I think there are a few that may have to leave around an hour, so hopefully.
Madam Chair, if I could real quick, I just want to bring something up. This is not relating to the master plan work session today, but last Thursday, just for everybody's information, Board of County Commissioners had a conversation. As we all know, we've been interacting with the state in regards to solar projects. I just want to bring that up and make a suggestion. If any of you have the opportunity to go back and watch that meeting from last Thursday afternoon, staff updated us on a variety of things that are going on with that, one of which is there's a possibility. Chris, could you explain that? Is it more of a possibility, or are we still in a compromise discussion on that topic?
Are you referencing the MACO
Yes.
compromise bill?
Yes.
Yes, so the Maryland Association of Counties is currently working with industry and the various state agencies that this would affect to develop what they're calling a compromise bill. This would be a bill that it recognizes that the question about where solar facilities can be located has basically been answered in the courts, and that they can be located anywhere. But it's trying to compromise in the balance of preservation of agricultural land versus the proliferation of solar facilities. So one of the key concepts of the compromise bill is that if a solar project is being proposed in an area that a county or state or federal government has determined that there's a desire for preservation. So our preservation areas throughout the county, that a solar company would need to compensate a county such as ourselves a certain dollar amount per acre, and that money would go towards an ag preservation program, for example. So the idea being that one way that we can have some sort of control over our destiny is we could preserve more agricultural land, because there is not a mechanism to force solar projects on preserved property. However, property that is not preserved yet, but is in an area where we would like it to be preserved, if some funding can be provided to counties, then we can increase the amount of preserved area, if that all makes sense. So that's the compromise bill that MACO is considering for legislation next spring. There are some other requirements that they're documenting, such as some of the regulations that we have discussed concerning setbacks and landscaping and so on. So the state may come out with their own version of the codes that we are currently considering locally. So,
I just want to ask you one quick question, and I know this is obviously still in the works. Is that number range, that 3,500 to 5,000, pretty much where they're sticking to, or is there a possibility of that changing?
so anything's possible to
Okay.
change, right? So this is what they're currently discussing and negotiating. They wanted to keep it simple so as to not, so I don't think there's much of an interest in varying that across the state, even though it's understood that land prices vary. And the range, just to add more complexity, the range that they're thinking about, the 3,500 versus 5,000, would be related to the proximity to existing power lines. So if there's an existing power line that runs through an area that the county wishes to preserve eventually, right? If it's within 2 miles of that corridor, within that corridor, then the reimbursement would be 3,500. Because in theory, that's in closer proximity to an existing line, so it's more desirable to be closer to that existing line. If it's outside of that 2 mile corridor, that's where it would increase to $5,000 per acre.
Chris, it just seems like it makes more sense to take the average price that each county's paying because you're right, it varies dramatically from one side of the state to the other. It makes no sense to set just a narrow window like that. That makes no sense to me as a former ag preservation person. The other thing is, I want to ask you while you're at the mic, are we the only county that had an ordinance in place that stopped solar on ag before any of these projects were put into the pipeline? And if that's the case, why wouldn't that be a consideration in this? And even at Mako, that should have been a consideration on what they're talking about here. Are we the only county that had an ordinance in place? Because the other counties have overlay requirements that allow solar on ag. We had none of that. We had an ordinance against it. So that's my question.
That's my understanding. I'm not aware of another county that had a strict prohibition on agriculture, on solar development on agricultural land.
I just
No.
can't understand why that was not considered in any decisions that were made. Because that's a profound decision that was made by our county officials. I'm editorializing here, and I maybe apologize, but to me, that is a big deal. And I think that should be considered in all this. But again, I think they should go back to the well on this as far as if you're gonna compensate in any way. I know there are two different topics here we're talking about, but I don't like this window here. The variation, even within our county, the variation of easement values, it's dramatic. Just a comment.
Is it similar to, I guess, the law where the lower, in this case, it would be the county, is subject to state requirements, and then the state would be federal? Is that what we're looking at?
So yeah, so the state has the legal authority to preempt the county on these type of zoning matters, and that was established in case law over a decade ago.
Right.
And so in this case, the county, we do not have a whole lot of cards to play in this. So what Mako is trying to do is get the best that we can. And so the idea being with this compromise bill that it balances some of the state interests. One of the things that I've often commented on is that what we struggle with are the conflicting ideas from the state. We have a desire for more affordable housing. We have the desire for solar energy, but we also have a desire to preserve more property and so on. We have a desire for increased stormwater management regulations. Some of these things conflict. And so what Mako is trying to do is, with this compromise bill, is to address two of those issues, one being solar development, the other agricultural preservation. So the idea being that if there are projects in areas that the county wishes to preserve, that the solar companies would contribute money towards furthering that. But as far as where it's going to be located and so on, that's already been set. You're right, Ralph, the county did pass ordinance banning it in agricultural land, but from a state perspective, that will probably be preempted. So we will not be able to put any restriction on where it's located.
My only additional comment, and I don't want to take too much of this because I know we've got this other presentation, but I did feel it was something that everyone needed to at least have a little more knowledge on. Chris, is there any opportunity from Carroll County's perspective to, and obviously, we've got Commissioner Rothstein involved with Mako, but from either a departmental side or just a county position, is there any opportunity, since this isn't finalized? I mean, I think Mr. Robertson had the best point about the various counties, because, you're looking at Howard County, it's 30, 40,000 an acre, and to get 3 to 5,000 for a 40,000 acre in that area makes absolutely no logical sense to me. Not that I'm trying to side with Howard County, but even from the Carroll County perspective, 3 to 5 when you're looking at 10 to 15,000 on average for an acre, and I realize AgPres, we cap it out at about 70%, but it seems to me that there's a cleaner way to do this than just give everybody that very tiny amount of funding. I don't know, is there a way we can still engage in that conversation?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And MACO continues to have conversations with the various stakeholders. And then this will not become a reality until the next, in the spring session of the General Assembly.
Okay.
And at that point, there's an opportunity for public comment and so on. So this
Okay.
is very early in the process, but thought it was important that folks be aware of the direction that we're going.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, you're up.
Thank you. Well, let me just say at the outset, I know that our timing is slightly off here, so I will try to give you as much information as seems like the appropriate amount for your low blood sugar levels. And we can certainly revisit these topics in the future. But a few things that I wanted to do were just to introduce some concepts that we've heard talked about in some of, especially in some of our master plan joint work sessions and work sessions, that I wanted to just start planting some seeds with you. These are really big and sort of complex topics, so better to give little bits at a time, I think, than try to just inundate you with all kinds of facts and figures and detailed information. But when it seems like the appropriate time to dig into this stuff a little bit more, at least you'll have a little foundation for that. So, so what we're going to talk about today is the master plan and some of its connections to two things: water and wastewater demand and capacities, and our buildable land inventory, or how many potentially developable lots we feel are sort of out there in the county, and how we calculate that. I'm going to ask Brenda Denny to join me at the table here. She's going to dig into the water and wastewater demand and capacities portion of this. But just to sort of frame our context a little bit here. So I have these three items, and really this is less of a hierarchy that this flow chart suggests, and there should be two directional arrows connecting these things together, and I'll tell you why. So the master plan and the comprehensive plans from a real high level is what's establishing our land use designations, and then flowing from that, the zoning that we have inside and outside of our growth areas. In theory, then, our water and wastewater plans should be built on what we're planning for development-wise, and our buildable land inventory should be calculating things based on what we've got planned as well. But I just want to point out that the water and wastewater plans, sometimes the master plan or the comprehensive plans are based on what our limitations are in our water and wastewater systems. And so you'll hear a little bit more about that, but I wanted to just establish that kind of at the outset, that one doesn't necessarily flow exclusively to the other or vice versa. So that's why understanding what our capacities and our demands are in our public water and sewer systems currently are, or could be in the future, are important to informing what we talk about in the master plan. They could drive what our possibilities are, or they could reflect what our plan development is. Okay. And then the buildable land inventory, that's a little bit more of a defined number, and that is based on our existing zoning, which is based off of our comprehensive plans. But one thing that we'll talk about when I describe what that buildable land inventory is that we don't currently have calculations for our future land use, our designated land use. So that's something we might want to explore to help us get a handle on what we're talking about in terms of potential development based on our plans. Okay, so that's sort of the big context here. I'm going to turn it over to Brenda to talk a little bit about what our public water and wastewater capacity currently is and what some of the limitations on those systems may be.
Good morning. So as Daphne said, theoretically, you know, you're going to have, this is the plan that you want, and you're going to have water and sewer plans to accommodate that growth. But as she also said, sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you're limited by various different factors that could affect whether you can provide the wastewater capacity or the water supply capacity to meet the demand that you project based on your future land use. So there are, you know, first I wanted to start off by just giving you like some examples of some of those factors.
Excuse me, Brent, I don't think your mic's on.
It says it's on.
Is it?
I'll lift it up a little bit, maybe.
There you go.
Okay.
So, can you hear me now?
That's better.
For water, a good example of a potential limitation is whether or not you can get more water allocated to you by the state. And what that means is, you know, you have, the state will permit a certain amount of water to a municipal system, water supply system, and it's based on a number of different factors, including how much land the municipality has within their control for the water to be recharged for groundwater system. So, you know, most of our systems in the county are groundwater based. We do have a few that draw from surface water, but in order to replenish that groundwater, you know, when it rains, the water recharges that groundwater through the ground, right? So you need to have enough land in order to be recharging in the amount that you're using. That's very basic, but that's kind of how the state looks at it. So they won't give you more water than they feel that you have within your control. You know, so you can't just go out, you know, a couple miles away from town on a property that has nothing to do with the municipality and just assume that you can use water that they would have available to them. So that's one of the limiting factors, is making sure that you can get more water from the state. Okay, it's not whether it's there or not, but whether you can get it from the state. On the sewer side, some examples of potential limitations are the design capacity of the wastewater treatment plant. So the wastewater treatment plant is designed to treat a certain amount of sewage, and in some cases, those plants can be expanded. In other cases, they cannot, because they have site limitations or property ownership constraints, okay? Permitted capacity could be another constraint. You may be able to expand, but for some reason or another, the state may not be willing to increase your permitted capacity. And that could be because of water quality issues or, you know, any number of things, right? The Bay nutrient caps is another example. So back in 2010, the Environmental Protection Agency set limits for the Chesapeake Bay for nitrogen and phosphorus, and said this is the amount that the bay can take in terms of those two pollutants and still stay within water quality standards. If you're not within that limit, you have to do all these different things in order to get those pollutants down, right? Which is a lot of what we do with our stormwater permit, the MPDES permit, right? But those same limits apply on wastewater treatment, not just stormwater. So each plant has a cap on either nitrogen or phosphorus. And so they cannot, take in any more sewage to be treated than whatever that limit is. So some of them are well under that, and that's not going to be an issue, but there could be somewhere, if you can't treat, beyond whatever that cap is set by the federal and state government, then you can't take more into the system. You can't accommodate more growth. So those are some examples of things that could be limitations on your water and wastewater. And then, of course, when we're looking at this, you're always going to be sort of looking at it at a point in time, right? So, for example, our current water and sewer plan is 2023. So if you're looking at what we currently have available, you're going to look at what's the demand for the future, and what capacity do you have to be able to accommodate that demand in the future. And like I said, it's going to be based on a point in time. So you're going to assume that, if you're looking at your water and sewer service areas, and now we have a long range sewer service area that looks a little bit farther ahead than the state requires you to look, so that we can plan ahead a little bit more. So if you're looking at all of that, any of that could change, but if you're looking at based on where we are now, based on the zoning, like Daphne said, and based on what our water and sewer service areas are of the existing water and sewer plan, then you say, all right, so are there any of these constraints that are coming up for water supply or wastewater for we have 8 systems in the county that are, full municipal systems, both water and wastewater. Are any of these 8 systems coming up against with any of these limitations, right? So then you're going to look at that, and then you can change certain things based on those limitations, and some things can't be changed based on those limitations. So you can change your demand. You might be able to, put money towards something to address a limitation, but other limitations, it doesn't matter what money you've got, it's not going to, you can't change the cap that the federal government or the state government put on your plant, right? So the next slide, now let me just caveat, this is completely illustrative purposes only. This is not meant to be whether these individual systems have these issues or not, okay? But to give you an example, if you were looking at the systems and say you used red, yellow, green light, right? And green is, in this case, would be, all right, there aren't any issues, water, we've got enough water to accommodate the projected future growth for this system. Yellow could be, on here would represent, there's some issues, but it doesn't mean they're not insurmountable. You might be able to work around some of these limitations. And then perhaps red here is then, this is not a limitation that we're likely to be able to get around. So to give an example here on Freedom, we've got the majority of the water supply comes from Liberty Reservoir. And we've got ample amount of water through our agreement with Baltimore City to be able to accommodate the projected future growth for that area based again on that point in time. What was the zoning? What's our water sewer service areas, right? Based on that, we've got Freedom has ample water. So that's not going to be a constraint when you're looking at Freedom to see how much additional growth you want to be able to accommodate there. However, if you look at the wastewater plant, that could be more of a constraint. So I don't know how many of you know, but we do not own or operate the Freedom wastewater treatment plant. So there is a design capacity for that plant, and but we do not have the full plant capacity available to Carroll County. The state has a portion of that reserved for them. They own and operate. They own the system that's operated by Maryland Environmental Service. So the plant has capacity, but we don't have enough of that allocated to meet projected demand. So we're looking at that as yellow because we could potentially have conversations with the state to try to negotiate how much we have allocated from that plant. So
curiously, who would they allocate it to, if not us? I mean, what?
Well, the state currently has an allocation as part of that capacity reserved for themselves because of the development at Springfield and, you know, the state, whole state property there.
Okay, gotcha.
Just out of curiosity, and I know we've got two areas, Mount Airy and Westminster, neither that have any noted limitations, but Westminster's under a consent decree by MDE. I would consider that a limitation, would you not?
So, yeah, Westminster, we've got green here for a good reason. They used to be under consent agreement, but, so one of the things that, you know, when you're looking at what could be done is you might be thinking out of the box, right? So Westminster participated in a pilot project with the state for potable water reuse. And they are currently constructing a plant it's called Pure Water Westminster, where they are taking water from the wastewater treatment plant, treating it, and putting it into their reservoir. So it's cleaner than the water going into the reservoir. And then the water will be withdrawn from the reservoir at their at their water treatment plant and treated again. So that project, and the state's currently developing regulations for water reuse, that project has enabled them to have the water capacity that they need, so they won't have the problems that they had when they had the consent order.
But there's still, from all the conversations we've had of late on Westminster, and I have been in quite a few of those of late, that's still something that's in place formally with the state. And then the other thing is regarding the additional allocation. This allocation is not going to max out anytime soon. This is several years down the road at its earliest. So I'm just curious how they can it can be completely green with no limitations, because the water that's coming from the Pure Water project will in part make up when they take the one location offline. So it's not putting in additional allocation above that threshold. They're trying to get back to that threshold.
Right, and I understand what you're saying, but remember, this is illustrative purposes only, isn't meant to be the
I was just
actual
curious, that's fine.
case.
I just want to make sure I understood, so no, I appreciate it.
Brenda, while we're on the water, before we get to the next phase of this, and I don't know if this makes any difference or not, but there were quite a few easements, agricultural land preservation easements, that were written with a water recharge allocation to Westminster and a few other municipalities. Is any of this taken, because we worked extensively with MDE to see if that would be recognized, if there were water allocation needs. Let's just take Westminster, because they were the first ones, and I'll take the farm that's located next to the Thomas Bennett and Hunter plant. That's a good example. There are a few deep wells on that farm. The farm's under easement, but the entire farm has a water recharge element in that easement that could be dedicated to the city of Westminster. Is that taken into consideration when you're talking about recharge areas, and does that make a difference? So, you know, what I'm getting at is, is that a trend that we should be looking at as far as water allocation and the proximity to potential easements in the future? I don't know if they're still writing that into the easements or not on strategic farms, but was that taken into consideration by either the municipality or the county when you're looking at this?
So just, again, this is illustrative only.
I understand that.
But, so we're going to first look at this and say, all right, what's the demand? And do we have the capacity available, water supply and wastewater for each system, to accommodate what their current projected demand is? And then we identify, are there limitations? If they do, great, right? If they don't, then what are the limitations, and can those limitations be overcome?
Yeah,
So water
there were
recharge
percentages-
easements.
Yeah, there were
yes.
percentages written into these easements that could be allocated and still allow that landowner to have enough water to operate that farm under certain limitations.
Yes.
So I just
And we
wanted to
have
bring
used
that up
that,
because
yes.
there was a lot of work put into that, from water resource upstairs and many trips down to MDE working through this, and I just was putting that into the conversation because it's real.
Yeah, it is
wonder how
something we are still doing. And if a system comes up against a capacity allocation issue, then that is a tool that we have available in order to help them get that allocation.
So do you
yes.
track that in the planning department, how many acres are available? I mean, it should be in the Ag Preservation Office, and the planning should have those figures also, because it amounts to a fair amount of acres.
Right, so AgPres has that information available, as does our groundwater hydrogeologist. So, yeah, we are tracking that information, and we know what we've got
The idea
available.
behind that was to help push clustering in and maybe the densities up, which we talked about here today. And so that there was a reason behind all this. Just wanted to lay that on the table.
Thanks, Ralph.
So as we're going through these, you see like some of these might be yellow, and it says additional water needed. Well, that's based on this point in time where we looked at the zoning and the water and sewer service areas. They might need additional water in order to meet that. That doesn't mean it's a limitation that can't be overcome. They just need to find more water supply. And in some cases, these water charge easements are a tool available to us to help that, to overcome the limitation. So that's just one tool, and we look at multiple tools once we see whether or not we need to be able to serve or find more water. In the past, sometimes the municipalities have actually pulled in their growth area boundaries because of the limitations that were there. Now we're closer to where they should be, but before we were required to look at this as part of the comprehensive planning process, some of them, like Hampstead, for example, had a growth area that was way bigger than they could possibly serve with water. And so they shrunk their boundary in, and now it's more reflective of, it's more balanced at this point. So for each of these, we're going to look at this, and we're going to say, they need more water. Can we get more water? What's the limitation? Can it be overcome? And the same with the wastewater. Some of these aren't going to be able to go any bigger on their wastewater capacity because of these bay caps. So for example, Hampstead, they have design capacity is at 0.9 MGD, 900,000 gallons per day. And their bay cap for total phosphorus is also 900,000. So they're not going to be able, and they can expand there. So they're not going to be able to accommodate any additional growth in terms of their wastewater plant. Others, like Mount Airy, their cap and their projected growth are under what their current design capacity is. So, that one's looking better. Union Bridge, not saying right now the plant can't handle the projected growth, but it's not saying a new plant couldn't be built, because it could be, but that's just that's a money issue. So, that's a limitation that could be overcome if somebody wants to pay for a new plant for them. That's a big deal, but it's an example of showing like certain things are money issues and other things are policy or regulations that we cannot overcome that limitation. So, and I'm not going to go through each individual thing any more than that, but it gives you a general idea of hopefully the kinds of things that we need to consider and whether or not each individual growth area is going to be able to take on additional growth beyond what they've, maybe even based on what they already have, they might need to pull something in, or can they take on more in the future based on what the limitations are and whether they can be overcome.
And so, thank you, Brenda. As Brenda was sort of alluding to there, the reason why understanding this information is important is because we look back at some of the conversations we've just recently had about directing growth into our designated growth areas, and working with the municipalities to be able to do that sort of thing. And so this starts to fill in some of the picture about what might be involved in terms of those discussions. So a lot of municipalities have, as Brenda said, kind of pulled in their growth area boundary because in this case, the water and sewer and/or sewer capacity is driving that planning. Are there opportunities to work with the municipalities and the state probably in trying to overcome those limitations? There may be. In other places, there may not. But I just wanted to kind of take this time to plant these seeds in your brains. So as we're thinking about what growth in the county could look like, it's not just an open, an open free-for-all, and we can work to expand growth areas or do this or do that. These are some of the limitations that we'll need to be aware of as we go into those kinds of conversations.
Daphne, one question on sewer. A large tract of land, a developer comes along and says, all right, there's limited potential here. What if I build a treatment plant? Is that something the state would look at?
Yeah, definitely. That is an option, whether they're constructing a new plant or they're paying money towards one or doing some very targeted mitigation kinds of things. Those are all options that are out there. Some of it will probably depend on what the improvements are and whether that's something that an individual developer can be responsible for or if it's something that needs to be part of kind of a larger package. Because sometimes the limitations don't operate in isolation.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions just sort of generally on water and wastewater capacity and demand?
Does the health department allow a common septic area for, say, a 4 or 5 lot development that would have one common septic area? Is that allowed in a county?
Like
I know
a
it is in
community?
some other county. In other words, if you have a 3-lot development clustered, and the only perk area could be a common septic area for the 3 lots. Is that allowed?
I believe it is. It's usually like a community septic.
It would be like a homeowners association type
Yeah.
deal.
It's a business.
I just was wondering, is that allowed in the county, in this county? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else.
I know that the state law does provide for those systems, but how much authority the individual county health departments have or don't have over that, I just haven't run into that.
I guess that's my question,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I will say, often lenders aren't
They don't like
big
it.
on it. They like, nope. So,
And that's a good idea.
There's a reason for that.
But I know there are counties that have tried that, and
Right.
they fail miserably, usually.
yeah.
It's kind of like flag lots and using common driveways.
Yeah.
Any
I
good
just
lawyer
was-
would say, don't
I just
buy
was
one.
wondering if there was
Lenders
any.
do allow that.
They allow it, but
they
they
allow
shouldn't as much. It's,
Yeah.
My recommendation is, don't do it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so something to keep in the back of your minds as we go through these discussions, and we're certainly happy to dig into this a little bit more, which you'll have the opportunity because a
More
lot
than
of
you'll
this
ever
data
want to.
was coming from the preliminary results for the water resources element, which Brenda will bring to you in the coming months. Right? Yeah.
Probably in the winter.
Okay. Moving on then, let's talk about the buildable land inventory. So I think at one point during one of our work sessions, somebody had asked a question of whether we have a handle on how many lots are possible to be developed, that sort of thing. And we definitely have that information. They are estimates, so I'm just going to start this whole part of this presentation by emphasizing these are estimates, and they work actually in a range. So we have low, medium, and high estimates. But this is something that we've been doing since 2005. In 2005, we did the first buildable land inventory report. That report was updated in 2012. And since 2012, we've been running these calculations on an annual basis, and you see them every year as part of the planning annual report. So on the right-hand side, you'll see page 26 from the most recently approved planning annual report that has some of the tables that you'll see a little further in the presentation. And also, I should note, I will provide you with an electronic copy of the presentation. Okay, so basically what the buildable land inventory is we run all kinds of calculations based on specific property constraints and their current built condition to estimate how many additional residential and/or commercial or industrial lots and development could be accommodated there. So this gives us a sense of what our potential is. So I just want to walk you through what that calculation process is, and then give you a set of numbers to refer to, again, as we look forward to the discussions in the master plan. So first on the calculation, the first thing we do is identify what constraints are on the property that are going to naturally limit what development potential there is. So you'll see on the screen now the constraints that are applied for the residential calculations only. So there are a few things that are absolute constraints. In other words, it's going to take that entire property out of the calculation. So that would be anything with that are publicly owned lands, anything with an ag pres easement on it, any ag remaining portions that don't have further subdivision rights, road rights of way, open space, quarries, public use, and other non-buildable parcels. Then we have partial constraints that are taken off the property. This may not be for the entire property, but that's going to be areas where you have streams and required stream buffers, 100-year floodplains, basically all of the environmental constraints that we regulate for, as well as things like communication towers. So the process to calculate the residential development potential is to identify those constraints and take them off, subtract them out from the parcel area that could be used to calculate development potential. Then that parcel data is related to the zoning. So I just want to make note here. This is based on existing zoning. So if everything that could be developed was developed tomorrow under current zoning, that's what that calculation is. It does not look at what we've got planned. So in other words, in a particular growth area, there might be land that's currently zoned agriculture, but it's planned to be zoned in the future for some type of residential development. That's a difference in the potential, in the development potential there, the potential lot yield off that property. So we would only be calculating on the existing zoning, not future land use. Okay, so we take the constraints off. We relate that parcel data with the zoning and identify which parcels would be used to calculate the residential buildable land inventory. We are now including commercial and employment campus zoned land because recent changes to the zoning ordinance allow for some residential development in those zones. Then we apply some multipliers to each zoning designation to identify what the potential lot yield might be. And those multipliers are based on our historical averages of what lot yield has been in different zones. Just a little note here that anything that's outside of a water and sewer service area, we will cap at that 7-lot maximum in response to HB 236. So you might have a property that otherwise would have been calculated out for, I don't know, 10, 15 lots, something like that. But we put that 7-lot cap there because of the limitations that HB 236 puts on it. Last step is to then identify if any of those parcels are improved or have some other type of development already on them that would alter what that potential lot yield might be. We do this for both county properties and for municipal properties. So it's the same steps, but maybe different multipliers or slightly different calculations based on their zoning in the municipalities as opposed to county zoning. All right, so this gives us, we'll do this 3 different times. We do a low, medium, and a high estimate on residential. And then for commercial, it's just slightly different. The constraints are different on commercial and industrial. So it's really just limited to floodplains, wetlands, and impervious areas, which denotes that it's already got a certain amount of development on it. So again, we're relating the parcel data with the zoning and identifying which parcels would be used to calculate that commercial and industrial BLI. And we'll take the constraints out of the parcel data and then go through a process to identify anything that's already improved versus vacant. And that's really kind of a parcel by parcel analysis to see which developed parcels are not really capable of taking on additional development. And then we'll look at what that resulting potential is on commercial and industrial lands. And again, we do this for both county and municipalities. Any questions on our process before we start looking at some numbers quickly? Okay. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of detail on or time on these numbers. You can kind of digest them on your own time, but I did want to be able to provide some numbers as part of this presentation. So when we're looking at the potential residential lots in our growth areas, this chart gives you a sense of what we're talking about. We've split it out by PFA or priority funding area and MGA, which stands for municipal growth area, and DGA, which stands for designated growth area. So basically, our priority funding areas are sometimes a little bit smaller than our designated growth areas. So this just gives you a sense of what that difference is, and then what we're talking about in terms of total numbers. And you can see some of the ways that those numbers are allocated between those areas. So within our designated growth areas as a whole, we're looking at about 8,700 lots, and this is the medium range. So there could be a lower range or a lower number, there could be a higher number. This is kind of right in the middle there.
Daphne, on that, how, the low, medium, high, they're obviously lower, there's some expectation or part of a formula that says, it's not going to happen because of prior experience. This has happened with what we've seen in this area, or how do you get the low, medium, high grades?
Sandy, do you want to, what are some of the things that really affect the difference between low, medium, and high? This is Sandy Baber. She's with our GIS division.
I'm not the best person to answer for residential. I do the non-residential portion of the buildable land. Mike Roberts does the residential, but we do take different factors into it. Like Daphne was saying earlier, the different constraints, the partial constraints come into play with that. It's almost like the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. So that's, and then in the middle, it kind of is the middle ground. So that's how we do the low and the high, and track, because we've been doing this for 20 years now, we can kind of look at our numbers and see how trends go, and the medium is basically where we usually are falling on average. So we feel very confident with that. Most of the time, the low and the high get pushed out, and we don't even use
It's
those.
like a bell curve kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, for instance, you could get, well, some of the things that you've had before you recently include things like age-restricted housing. So that's obviously going to be a higher yield than what we would have calculated for that particular parcel, because it's just got other potential. You may also have somebody that chooses to do some different kind. I suppose there may be a scenario where somebody would choose to do larger lots or lower density than what they could, under other circumstances, achieve on that property. But so we just never know exactly what's going to come through, or really what somebody might find during the development process that creates a limitation that that we can't anticipate just based on these constraints that we've already identified. So that's why you want to have a little bit of a range. It's not a solid number. Anything could come up to shift it one way or another. Okay, so still sticking on residential here, you've got two other tables that that look then at those numbers that are possible within our designated growth areas, and then compare that to what's possible outside of those areas. So you'll see that that our existing, on the top table, table 21, based on existing zoning, we've got a little bit more in terms of potential lots that are possible outside of our designated growth areas than inside, but it's almost 50-50. The table below that then gives you a little bit more information relative to the lots that are already on the ground. So you'll see the existing units that we have are 66,622. There's the potential for just under 20,000 additional units. And then you can see how that breaks out in terms of inside versus outside our designated growth areas. I think it's a good thing that we're over 50% of total potential units inside our designated growth areas. And you'll see on the map on the next slide where those potential units are. It's a little hard at this scale to pick up on, but you do see in and around our municipalities and the Freedom area, there are some clusters of red dots that show up a little bit more solid, that suggest where there is potential for additional development within our growth areas. A lot of the remaining red dots that you see there, which are the potential residential lots, they're real scattered. They're not concentrated in any one particular area. And those really are, whether those ever come to fruition is completely up for grabs. You know, a lot of that depends on whether somebody chooses to develop their land, whether it can be developed, and then what some of the other incentives are. So I'll just point out that if you look at that little sort of crescent area between Tawny Town, Union Bridge, and New Windsor, you see that there are fewer red dots in that area, and that's primarily due to the fact that that's one of our designated priority preservation areas. So there's a whole lot of land preservation that has occurred there, as well as the area between Westminster and Manchester and Hampstead.
Daphne, I think I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's why we should really be looking into the strategy moving forward on ag preservation. I think that's yet to be discussed and yet to be determined, but I think it's very important moving forward based on this inventory that we're looking at, that we take a real hard approach on the strategy. And a lot of it's, of course, based on the dollars and cents of it too. What can the county afford and the state afford, and then what is most effective for all the above. So I think it's really important we keep that in mind as we look at that. That is really, I'm glad you brought that up.
I totally agree. And I'll tell you, I'm gonna, one other observation about where we are. And, you know, if you had just said, Daphne, you know, rank the areas of growth or where there's the most potential, you know, I would have put Freedom and Westminster 1 or 2 or 1, but I would have, for the life of me, I would have put Mount Airy third. And it's shocking to me because of its proximity to I-70. It's shocking to me that there's not more red down there.
Right.
So that's a point of information. It's not saying, I'm not saying, you know, something should happen. I'm just saying that's an interesting, because again, it's just, you know, these are your plotting points, but it's the visual thing and the numbers are great when you put them together. Thank you.
I think Mount Airy encompasses Frederick County, Montgomery County, and some of Howard, so.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
But the numbers on here are only Carroll County. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
no,
so-
I know
yeah, yeah.
that.
Yeah, so that's
but
cool.
if you
Yeah.
look at the geographic
Yeah,
area.
yeah, I hear you.
and
I hear you.
It's
It's a
also
difficult area
pretty built up
because
out there.
of the you know, what is Mount Airy?
Exactly.
Is it Frederick or is it Carroll?
Yeah.
As it wants to be.
And so there's been an awful lot of pushback on both directions there, and that's been a tough one to solve.
But it's great stuff, so thank you.
On the non-residential potential side of things, you have some of the same types of charts here. This is by acreage as opposed to individual lots. So you can see where there are where there's some higher numbers, and this is again within the priority funding areas and designated growth areas. But then I'll just call your attention to the line on the bottom there, or the two lines on the bottom above the total. So total inside and total outside is the acreage inside the priority funding areas or designated growth areas, and the total outside. So we have a fair amount of potential inside our designated growth areas, and pretty low acreages outside. And this table gives you, again, some of the same information you saw on the residential, compares the, what we've got existing to what we've got on the potential side of things, and the total acreage, and then a little bit of a breakdown in terms of where those acres are located. And then here's the map to go along with that. You'll see again a lot of that, as the chart showed, a lot of the potential acreage is located in and around our designated growth areas, municipalities. Just a note about the annual updates. So as I mentioned, this is something that's done every year. It's calculated by our Division of GIS. And they're always kind of looking at those constraint layers and seeing if there's anything that needs to be changed. Maybe there's new state legislation or even updates on things like areas that have been developed in the past year or rezoned or anything like that. We'll also account for anything that has been taken out of development potential as a result of entering into an ag preservation easement. And there are lots of ways that we can use these numbers. My hope is that we'll look at them just as reference points for our conversations about growth in the county, where we want it, where we don't want it, what our potential is, and maybe where there are some opportunities to shift the balance if that's something that you want to see. But we also use these to help us calculate our population projections, do the water and sewer projections, those kinds of things. So this is a really important tool that we have. A lot of work goes into it. We've been refining this for close to 20 years, and it's a tool that we have at our disposal. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew about it, that you know that we can rely on that as we go forward with our master plan discussions. And if there are other ways that you want to see some of this information, please let us know, and we can try to pull that together, help you with visualizations or do some deep dives as you want. Any questions on the BLI that we haven't touched on yet?
I think it was very well presented, put together. Certainly appreciate all the information, and hopefully we understand it as we move forward.
As I said before, it's a lot of information to kind of assimilate. So we wanted to just introduce it to you, give you some things to work with initially. And certainly if there are any just sort of off the bat observations that you have based on what you've heard here today, that you want to share before we close the meeting, then happy to hear those and take note of those for future discussions.
I would say, like, the one thing that Ralph said about the recharge areas, definitely want to hear more about that, because I know, I think I have one property that has that water recharge area on it that's an ag pres. That was supposed to be designated for New Windsor, and then I heard MDE decided that maybe they weren't going to count that, even though it's right beside the ground they have. And then the
Yet
oth-
they approved it.
Did they finally-
MDE.
yeah.
But I don't know,
What do you
things
want
have
to-
changed, you know.
Yeah, well.
We
it's
don't
all-
know what
yeah.
things are doing now, that's why.
And then the other thing is Commissioner Gordon said something about watching the link to the solar thing. Can someone send us that link, just to make it easy? So we can just watch that portion of it instead of scanning through everything to
Sure.
look at that?
I appreciate you both mentioning the recharge, because I do think that's important we look at that.
Is there a way to I'm sorry. Is there a way to overlay the ag pres onto this?
Sure.
Kind of master map, just to
That would
visualize that?
be very helpful.
And the other piece, I guess, is the commercial industrial. I know it's probably a small, it might just deserve a blank map. with Commercial industrial dots.
Man, that's brutal.
I don't know whether to laugh or cry at that comment, but, you know.
I'm just trying
Well,
to figure that out.
It's food for thought for.
Yeah.
It's
So
something.
It is important.
It's something.
So what, you wanted a separate commercial and industrial map showing, so we do have that in here. Where'd my cursor go? That's the potential non-residential development. They are
Oh, yeah.
There it is.
purple areas that may not be as easy to discern.
Okay.
So, but you're going to send
I missed it. I'm
this to
sorry.
us, correct?
Yeah,
So we can
Yep.
make it bigger and. see it
absolutely,
better.
yep,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
okay,
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Daphne.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, gentlemen? No? Okay. All right, well, thank you, and thank everybody for the lengthy meeting today.
Productive meeting.
Huh?
Productive meeting.
Productive, lengthy meeting today, yeah. So the next evening meeting is November 6th at 6 PM here, and the next day meeting is Tuesday, November 19th, 9 AM here. And with that, I would,
Take a motion to adjourn?
yes,
So move.
okay? Or did you second? Somebody did, I'm sure.
Yeah,
All right,
I'll
all in
second.
favor?
Aye.